In the interest of time, and we have a full agenda today, I'm going to go ahead and call to order the Senate Education Meeting. And Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senator Buck. Senator Doñate. Senator Flores. Senator Hammond. Senator Neal. Senator Titus. Chair Lang.
Here. Thank you. Please mark Senator Donate present when he arrives. Excused. Please make sure that it's after lunch now. We do this every day that we come in here on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but please make sure you silence your phones because we've just been at lunch and been talking to all our friends. And so they don't go off during the meeting. I really appreciate that. If you're going to give testimony during the committee hearing, please leave a business card and sign up at the clipboard over on the table. And when testifying, please make sure, because I don't want to have to interrupt you, please make sure you state your name. And if you're affiliated with someone, that you also state that. And make sure you turn on the microphone. That's really important. Presenters will have provided 10 copies of agenda items that they want to have for the public, or submitted their presentation electronically to the committee manager by 1 o'clock yesterday, and anyone can view those on Nellis. At the end of the meeting, we'll do public comment, and committee members will be using their laptops from time to time to look up important data on the hearings that we're having. Please don't take that as a sign of respect. I will be going in and out today. I have a bill presentation in this committee. I also have a bill presentation in another committee. So if I'm coming and going, the very capable Vice Chair Flores will take over. So we will today start the meeting with going straight to work session. Oh, wait, we'll wait for Senator Donate. Let's go ahead and do, we'll do a bill. I think we'll go ahead and do a bill. And then when Senator Donate gets here, we'll go straight to work session. So let's open the hearing on Senate Bill 282. Oh, she's not here because she's at a work session. Okay, we're in recess. See how easy that works? It's the last 2 weeks, right, before deadline, and so getting everyone's schedules to be cohesive and work together, sometimes it's a challenge. No, yeah, but we're not gonna do that one right now. We can't do that till the end. Because Senator Grimes already needs us to follow in order, because she has a bill presentation. It's okay, you can talk. Okay, I'll call us back to order and we'll open the bill hearing on Senate Bill 282. Senator Nguyen, you can begin when you're ready.
I'm just gonna say this looks thick, but it's like 25-point font, so. Good afternoon, Chair Lang and members of the Education Committee. My name is Rochelle Nguyen, and I represent Senate District 3 in the heart of Las Vegas. I'm excited to be here this afternoon. This is actually my very first time presenting in any education committee in the legislative body. So I'm very excited about that. Presenting with me is from CCEA is John Veladita. I can't even talk today. Veladita, and who obviously has been here more times than he can probably count in front of these committees. So I will start by talking, so why Senate Bill 282? Often it's easy for people to make assumptions about why a particular bill is brought. So I always like to start every bill presentation that I do with what my why is, or what my problem is that I'm seeking to solve. I guess for all of you Marvel or DC or comic book and movie characters, what is my origin story for Senate Bill 282? So my kids were lucky and fortunate enough to start their elementary school education in our Clark County School public schools. They attended a 5-star elementary school. When they began their career in first grade, they were at a school that had 5 stars, had excellent programming, had financial literacy programs, had electives essentially for like elementary school kids. They changed classes, had different teachers, had gardens in their schools, and everything was really fantastic. Our first child, who just turned 13 this weekend, yes, I know I look too young to have a 13-year-old, it's okay, attended this school. And he attended all the way from first grade all the way until 5th grade. He was our first, our baby. He's still my baby. And I think like many parents, we wanted to do everything we could at the time to be involved in our children's education. And so how we got involved was actually my husband decided to put in for the election and put his name forth for a school organizational team. My husband always tells me that he was actually the first elected in our household. And so, and he, watching him serve our community and serve our school and serve our kids in that way was kind of like our first entrance into like service. He was actually there, and we had an amazing principal at the time when our kids first started off in that school. And at that time, both of our kids were attending that school. They're 2 years apart. And he would attend every SOT meeting, as would all of the other SOT members, especially the parent members. And there was communication, there was collaboration, there was decision-making on that local level. And I think that is what he hoped it would be. Things started to go a little bit different because the principal decided that she was going to retire. And when she did retire, they knew as the SOT and as a member of the SOT that they were going to participate in those selection process for the principals. They had always been involved in budgetary decisions, from everything on what application, what apps to purchase, and what kind of like programming that they were going to encourage at the school. And so they really had that. They participated in interviews. They interviewed several candidates, and the SOT members were unified in their opinion about those candidates. Unfortunately, that is when my husband and the other members of the SOT realized that they did not have a voice. They did not have a real voice. In fact, when they recommended and they made their recommendations, the person that was recommended last on their list, they actually made a point of saying, this person probably shouldn't be doing this job because there are problems here. And we were able to discern that from our interview process. And you see that there was no thank you for taking time away from your family. No thank you for taking a time away from your job to participate in this process. Thank you for spending hours reviewing these budgets at the school. Thank you. We're going to go in an opposite direction, though. It was heartbreaking to see what happened next. I went back to the presentation that CCSD did between the Joint Finance and Ways Committee last Friday, and they indicated that the single most important factor for student success was teachers. And we learned this, my family learned this, and the school that my kids attended learned this in a very painful way. Their school lost about 80% of all of their teachers in that first year with this new principal. Their school rating, their star rating plummeted from 5 stars to 3 stars in a year, and ultimately led to us making the heartbreaking choice of pulling out our 5th grader in her very last year of school at that school and putting her into our local school, our neighborhood school. We tried and hoped things that would improve, like I said before, the literacy programs and the extras that made the school so successful have been eliminated, and it was not uncommon to see teachers crying in the hallways because of the climate that was taking place in that school. The other thing that I hear over and over and over again is, in addition to having like teachers in these schools, the next and most important piece, and maybe equal piece to the success of our children, is parental involvement. In 2017, AB 469 passed, creating autonomy for schools in CCSD, and Senate Bill 282 strengthens that autonomy by providing school organizational teams, or SOTs, more control of the school's budget, its plan of operation, the selection of a principal if there's a vacancy, timely use of the school's carryover dollars to improve student education, and a cleaner understanding of the selection of staff. We want parents involved. We hear it all the time. It's not just about the teachers. You talk about wanting parents involved. I personally think that parental involvement is key to success, and currently we are not empowering those parents. And in fact, we're disincentivizing those parents who do want to get involved. If you have a situation where people feel like their time has been wasted and their voice isn't heard, what kind of voice is that really for those parents being involved in those decisions? So if I walk you through the bill at this point, and I am working off of, there is an amendment to the bill that was included in Nellis and I think provided to the committee this week. Hopefully everyone has a copy of that. Senate Bill 282 addresses the 4 following areas. 1, empowerment of the school organizational teams. Currently, the SOT plays an advisory role when it comes to the approval of school budgets, but does not have voting authority over that budget. Currently, there are over 340 schools with SOTs, and the SOT is made up of 3 parents, 2 teachers, and 1 support staff, and if they choose, 1 community member. SB 282 changes, what was recommended in this bill is to require approval of the budget by a 75% vote of the SOT. I think that gives a clear voice to those SOT members on what is happening in the schools that they are hoping to be a voice for. Section 2, or the second section that this deals with, is the carryover dollars. Currently, all the remaining funds in the school's strategic budget are carried over into the next year, but there's no requirement for those dollars to be spent in a timely fashion or on students' instruction. We talk about money, and we talk a lot about money. I know there's quite a few people that sit on our money committees, and we talk about having to provide more money to our schools. And unfortunately, because of, I think some fear, and I think of some unfunding we have, and some other things, there's a lot of money that's just sitting in these accounts. The last I saw, it was almost $250 million that was hanging around in these savings accounts. The changes that I'm suggesting in Senate Bill 282 is that any funds over 1% of the school's precinct year-ending balance must be spent on improving student outcomes. If the school's precinct fails to expend the excess carryover forward year-end balance within 12 months, the unspent funds will be deposited into the education stabilization account. And then number 3, the selection of principals. Again, when a position for a principal is vacant, the SOT creates a list of qualifications and provides it to the superintendent. And the superintendent, at least 1 member of the SOT, interviews 3 to 5 candidates and submits them to the SOT, who ranks the candidates in order of preference and submits back to the superintendent. But under current law, the superintendent has the ultimate authority on hiring that principal. That is kind of the situation that I was talking about with my own personal story. What Senate Bill 282 seeks to change is the SOT would be required to submit to the superintendent a ranking of candidates based on prescribed qualifications of the position of principal, and authorizes the SOT to reject that selection of the superintendent, again, by that 75% of the members. Section 4 is the final major component of this bill, and it has to do with the selection of staff. Currently, principals interpret their authority to mean that they have unlimited authority over selection of staff, which means substitutes are hired in place of licensed educators. Principals often have the right to hire new educators when they apply for a job and are cleared by CCSD, and they have the right to hire educators who apply for transfer to the school. Essentially, the principals currently have the right to hire over 99% of all the staff. But where they do not have the right is to hire a substitute if a qualified educator is already available. The Nevada Board of Education passed regulations ensuring that a principal has to hire an educator in good standing before hiring that substitute. So in Senate Bill 282, the meaning of the selection of staff is clarified, and that it has to be done in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement. The only time it would apply is when a teacher is surplused or laid off from a school and their tenure provides for them to seek a vacant position in another school. The same regulations passed by the Nevada Board of Education would apply in that a principal has to hire an educator in good standing before hiring a substitute. This again applies to less than 1% of all licensed professionals. Those are kind of the high-level overviews of what this bill seeks to accomplish, and at this time, I am going to turn it over to my co-presenter here to kind of expand on some of these things.
John Vallardita, for the record, representing CCA. Thank you, Senator Wynn, for proposing this bill. And Madam Chair and members of the committee, I want to provide some context to why these proposed changes are happening. You know, several years ago, there was an effort in the 2015 session to pass AB 394, which was to essentially reorganize or change the school district. I was part of that process. I know Senator Neal was also part of that process. I sat on the Technical Advisory Committee and ultimately was part of helping to draft some of the language that became a bill in 2017, which was AB 469. The whole idea behind this reorganization was to decentralize the education delivery system. The hub of delivery in K through 12 is the school. And what's critical to that school is the team that carries out that education. And so the idea was to empower and to provide more autonomy to these teams to be essentially be able to, you know, do a good job in educating kids. We've had 4 years of this reorganization. And the last time I was before this committee, which was a couple of weeks ago, we presented what we thought were some, you know, very important statistics, and that were the proficiency levels of students, particularly in at-risk buildings. And so after 4 years of autonomy, you know, we think there's some needed changes. And so I want to start first and foremost with this idea of empowering parents and staff at a building to have more authority on developing the plan of operation and the budget, to transition from assist and advise to one where they actually have a say and they vote. We think that that's a significant piece to empower parents, particularly after a couple of years of COVID and the proficiency levels that we see today, to allow them to have more authority on how that plan of education and what kind of resources are going to be around that plan. So this bill provides an answer to that with that, you know, more empowerment. The second thing, which I think, you know, the amendment that Senator Wynn introduced is absolutely critical. When this bill was drafted, nowhere near was the intent for these schools to have this much money sitting unused. This money is a result of salary attrition. We have high vacancies. We fill a vacancy with a substitute, which in some cases is 40% of the cost of an FTE position, and hence the savings. Now, there's some other factors, but it's primarily salary attrition savings. And so now it's grown to the tune of almost $250 million, and it's not being used. This puts guardrails, this amendment puts guardrails on those carryover dollars. It essentially says you got to use it the year afterwards, but it's very prescriptive. It says it has to be used for instruction, that money has to deal with a student's education. More so relevant today with the passage of the pupil-centered funding formula, does this money have to be used? So for example, under the new funding formula, we have what's called weights. We have additional revenue for ELL students. We have additional revenue for at-risk students. We have additional revenue for gifted and talented students. That money should be used on those kids' education, and it's not being used on their education. That's why this amendment that essentially says, let's capture those carryover dollars and let's make sure they're used for instructional purposes. If you have an opportunity to look at the amendment, it says for the following areas: tutoring or other supplemental academic achievement programs within the school, programs to support social emotional learning within the school, extracurricular programs for students within the school, tutoring or other supplemental academic achievement programs, programs to support social emotional learning, and extracurricular programs for students. This essentially puts guardrails on two things. One, you got to use it, and you got to use it on the students that money was for, and you got to use it to improve their education. The third thing that we think is really good in this bill is the selection of the leader of the building. It empowers the school organizational team to have some say, not just a recommendation, but more of a say on who the leader of the school should be. And that didn't exist before. And we've seen the experience of 4 years where the school organizational team may recommend somebody, right? And they don't pick somebody out of the blue. These names are submitted to them as applicants for a vacancy. But in this bill, that it provides the SOT with a little more authority on the recommendations. Ultimately, it basically will be a decision on the part of the superintendent, but it does provide these SOTs with some more authority. And then finally, on the selection of staff. There is a provision under SB 469 that essentially says, and this I would ask each member of this committee to hear me out on this, because this is really critical. There's a correlation between the selection of staff and carryover dollars. And when the bill was drafted, it tried to put a guardrail around that correlation. The source of carryover dollars is salary attrition. Salary attrition is by and large a product of an FTE position not being filled by an FDE, a licensed educator, but by a substitute. That's the primary source of carryover dollars. Currently under statute, it says, to the greatest extent possible, the principal of a local school precinct shall select teachers who are licensed and in good standing before selecting substitutes to teach at a local school precinct. The principal, in consultation with the organizational team, shall make every effort to ensure effective licensed teachers are employed at the local school precinct. After 4 years of this bill in place, we found essentially some abuse around that the principals feel that they have this uncontrolled authority on the selection, when in fact they do not. This bill wasn't drafted with it. What I just read to you was essentially a guardrail. Now, the Board of Education adopted some regulations that essentially spells out and clearly stated that principals don't have this unfettered authority to select staff. But they have to select somebody in good standing, and they defined through regs what that was in the process. And all we're doing with this piece of legislation is to bring clarity, because as Senator Nguyen suggested, less than 1% of the staff is affected by this. And that are those staff that find themselves being surplused out of a school. And all we're saying is their tenure has to be one where they're given the opportunity to be accepted or the opportunity to be rejected, because CCA supports the Board of Education's regulations that were passed. So in closing, we think this piece of legislation is a product of what did we learn after 4 years of a decentralized model that had autonomy, some empowerment, and control of budgets and et cetera. And so what we're proposing here is changes to empower the SOTs, provides more autonomy, but also guardrails, particularly around the carryover dollars. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are you ready for questions? Okay, so I have one question, then the committee can ask questions. On your conceptual amendment, I'm just trying to, is there a difference between 3C and 3F? And if so, what's the difference? Typo?
I think it is. We're just reiterating.
So we're just going to cross off F if that's
We
okay.
can just cross that off. That would be fine.
Perfect. Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being at the table. I think you're well-meaning and well-intended. I have some concerns and I need some clarification. In your presentation, you talk about empowering staff and parents, but then I look at section 1, going down to number 4, that really talks about the bargaining agreements and perhaps your union staff. And then it says, you're talking about the organizational team of the school, which are not part of the bargaining agreements. Can you clarify? You're kind of interchanging, they have to meet certain bargaining agreements, but that would be your union teachers, I think, versus the school organizational team, and that has nothing to do with your union teachers, does it? Because it seems like you're meshing them together.
John Vallardita, for the record to you, Senator Titus. The SOT is composed of one stakeholder is parents, right? They're 50% of the SOT. And then the balance is licensed educators, support staff, and possibly a community member. Those members that are educators that we represent in the bargaining unit, I mean, that would be the only connection.
So in order to be a member as a teacher in that, do you have to be a member of your union?
No. There's a requirement that 50% of licensed educators that would be elected by their peers on the SOT have to be a member, but it's not a requirement that every member of educator has to be a member of the union.
Are 50% of the Clark County teachers members of the union?
For those that vote in that school. So if there's two positions, and no matter how many candidates run, half have to be a member of the union, the other half doesn't have to be a member of the union, if they're elected.
And did that somehow, sorry, Madam Chair, I just need clarification. Is that somewhere that 50-50 in these, that 50% of those teachers have to be a member of that? How was that determined?
That's part of the current legislation.
That was the original legislation,
Yes.
that 50?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you, Madam Chair.
And just Rochelle Wynn, for the record, just to be clear, there are 3 parent members of the SOT board, 2 teachers, one of which has to be a union member, and 1 support staff, and if they choose, 1 community member. Like, I know there are several legislators that sit on SOT boards currently as a community member in that respect.
Thank you. Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had a question on Section 3, Sub 5, and this is the language that I guess allows the SOT to determine the budget or co-determine the budget along with the principal. 2 parts. How did you arrive at 75%? And then I'll ask the second part.
John Miller did it for the record. Critical mass, supermajority, to get more of the stakeholders that are part of the SOT involved in the decision-making.
Okay, thank you for that. And so my follow-up, I mean, I served on it. You mentioned it in your testimony. This, having the SOT control the money, I think was something you probably mentioned when we were in those meetings for 2 years. And I never supported it, mainly because the liability still falls on the leader, the principal of the school, not the SOT members who might make a decision about the money. And whether or not that decision fails or is not necessarily in alignment with the responsibilities and duties that the principal may have to convey. And so can you help me understand, like, how would this be shared pain on the SOT when the leader, who is, the buck stops with them, not with the SOT, if something goes wrong and how they plan the money out?
John Miller did it for the record to you, Senator Neal. If you read the language, ultimate authority is still the superintendent. So the SOT, with this proposed change, would have authority to vote on the budget, 75% voting, and if they approve the budget, that doesn't mean the budget's in place. It gets kicked to the associate superintendent, who then either approves or doesn't approve, but ultimately to the superintendent. Currently, the way it works is the budget that's developed, or the plan of operation by the principal, still goes to the associate superintendent for approval, and ultimately the superintendent of the school district for approval. So final responsibility, the liability, if you will, is with the school district, as it currently is in legislation now.
And Rochelle Wynn, for the record, that was one of the things that I was most concerned about. Is I actually had looked at some of the legislative history, and I knew that was a concern. But I think that this has some balance in it that gives just an extra added voice to that SOT, with still the ultimate authority landing at the top.
So thank you for that, because the way I read it and interpreted it, if you are voted, if your vote can be overridden, although you're giving the power of the superintendent to have, not the superintendent, the principal, to have a vote versus being a non-voting member, he is still being overridden, or she is still being overridden by the SOT, which is why I asked that question, because technically you might think it's equality, but I don't necessarily feel that way, because not all folks on the SOT, although there's been budget presentations and they were supposed to understand the budget or at least present it, not all understand the intricacies of running the school. So I'll leave that there. So, Madam Chair, can I have a follow-up?
Please do.
So my next question is, I believe it's in, on the SOT team rejects the principal. So you get, which I have mixed feelings about it, but what happens in the meantime if they reject the principal that is selected by the superintendent that comes down, and then they get another bite at the apple to pick who they want?
John Villardita, for the record, to you, Senator Neal, the drafted legislation is the SOTs rank the principals or the candidates that have been interviewed. The superintendent has the right to reject if the first ranking, but then what triggers is the superintendent then has to make a selection from the balance of that 5, which means 4. So the superintendent still has to make a selection.
So I understood that. I meant in absence, I guess I should have been more clear. So let me make it more clear. In absence of a principal. So there have been situations where a principal has gone to another school. There is maybe an interim or someone else stepping up until they find who they want. And so there have been situations where literally, I think Cox and Woolley had this situation where there was kind of a shared relationship between the principals, and it seemed like the one principal who remained was running back and forth between the campuses. So how long do we expect this process to take when without a school leader while the SOT goes through their rounds?
Rochelle Wynn, I might be able to answer this just from the personal experience of watching my spouse go through the SOT process, is they did all the interviews, and we were in a similar situation where our principal that retired was also the principal of 3 other schools and was moving around between those schools. And so when they did the interviews, they interviewed and they ranked those 5 individuals. It wasn't like they had to come back. I suppose there could be a situation if you interviewed 5 candidates that were like submitted by the superintendent and you didn't like any single one of them, there might be like some issues there, but they're ranked. It happened pretty quickly. I mean, they interviewed them over a course of like 2 weeks and then had their rankings of their top 5.
Madam Chair, one last? Yes. So now I have a question on the amendment. So in the amendment, you lay out language, which I guess is a part of Section 8 on sub 3. And so I guess the way I read it, we're already doing, or I guess somehow mandating Central or the district to do some of this work. And now you want their carryover funds to now apply to it. And so I just wondered about how this was selected when I know that there's still ESSER dollars for tutoring. There's still other monies that we probably are moving this session for the district to spend on students. And now you want the carryover dollars to now be applied to the same areas. And, you know, I just wondered how you came to that conclusion, because it seems, I want the district to spend their money, right? What they get, and especially with the federal money that they received. And then the schools who are holding on to some of their dollars because they probably have never had this money before, and they're being more cautious because they're used to a history of a district of never having enough. How did you arrive at, I guess, the duplication of services?
John Velardita, for the record, Senator Neal. I don't know if it is actually a duplication of services. That doesn't mean that the school district doesn't provide some resources or some programs. This is very specific to the needs of the student population in that particular building. So, for example, in some of these elementary schools in Title I, the proficiency levels around reading and math are super low. So that what this is suggesting is you spend money that targets the specific needs of that student population around programs that would try to accelerate their learning. So that's what's unique about this proposal. It's not like we're relieving the school district of some financial obligation to resource a program. It's giving the opportunity to the school to say, this is the additional time we need or programs we need for these kids to improve their proficiency.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, let me say one more thing. I have mixed feelings about this bill in general, right? And tying the hands of the principal or the SOT or to determine what is probably the best thing they should do with their money is somewhat problematic just for me, right? I understand there's been an issue, and it's been the narrative, carryover dollars, carryover dollars, carryover dollars, for about 3 years. But I also believe that the wisdom of the principal may not fall into these categories, right? It's the same debate that we had between a Victory and a Zoom model, right? Zoom where it prescribed a certain activity, Victory where it gave a menu of options. And so maybe these are not, I mean, it could be shall expend on any of the following, but what if it's something outside of this, right? It says extracurricular programming for students, but when we talk about academic enrichment versus academic literacy programs, although you could say tutoring crosses over into that, that's still not necessarily what happens during the day. This seems to extend to what happens on the extended day post the school day ending.
I don't know if that's John Miller data for the record. Not sure if that's a question. Clearly, I heard the comment, but I do want to respond. So the money follows the student. And under the pupil-centered funding formula, there's two components to that. There's your base and there's your weights. And that money is for that specific student population in that building. It's not to be used 4 years later when they're out of that building. And so what this is proposing is essentially saying, and if there's suggestions around amending the use of it, that's fine. You know, we're open to that. But it's got to be used for those students' education. And that's what this attempted to carry or capture. And I want to share something with you. And I would ask that you listen to me. And I'm not going to suggest that this is, when I say listen to this real life story that occurred, this happens. I was contacted by a parent from a high school because the principal sat down with the SOT having no authority except advise and assist, and said, I want to give everybody here a $1,000 bonus, including myself. 125, 135 students, staff. That money. And we're going to call it retention. That never happened because we intervened. There was no retention issue in that building, but they wanted to spend it that way. And I'm not saying that people don't need additional dollars, but there's got to be some kind of guardrails on how that money should be spent, particularly if it's for a student. If I'm a parent, I think there's some exposure for a school district. If I'm an ELL student and that's supposed to be going to my kid's education, and I learned that that money's being used for non-ELL, I think there's some legal exposure for the school district around that. So the idea, though, behind this is it for that specific student population.
Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Lang, and thank you today for presenting, Senator Nguyen. I know that the leader makes the greatest difference in the school because it attracts talent. That person attracts talent. And I'm open to Section 5.5 on the SOT having input. I have seen that go awry. I think I know the situation in which you are referencing, and it is unfortunate that that has happened when it was a national award-winning school. And I don't know if the past principal and the SOT didn't have a lot of weight with the superintendent, but I do believe that they need input. So that would be the one area of this bill that I could potentially be in agreement with. The rest of it, I feel like it's an attack on autonomy. I was fortunate enough in 2008 to become an empowerment principal, and I don't know if CT Sewell at the time would have grown to national Title I school in the years that I was there without those autonomies. And I know autonomy is crucial with input, engaging that community. And so 75% as far as the way of, in order to get things passed through, in the initial stages, I don't know if I would have had that. And as a leader coming into a site, when you're trying to move change, a lot of times there's a lot of obstacles and challenges in front of you where you can't necessarily do that. So autonomy in staff also is another thing that is something that I feel like is a problem with this bill, because I've seen it. I've lived in that seat. So at the time, we had substitute teachers that, one in particular that actually had the highest scores in the school in a classroom. The rest were used as interventionists in different grade levels. So I just wonder, as far as the autonomy of staffing, Why do you want to force staff when it couldn't potentially be a consent of the principal, a win-win situation for that staff member either? Because they really have to buy into a model. I can't imagine running a company and not being able to choose or pick your employees that are the right fit. And so tell me how that is really going to move the needle in student achievement when the principal cannot pick their staff.
John Vallardita for the record, to Senator Buck. It doesn't take that authority away. We presented earlier that the Board of Education essentially adopted regulations, and it started with a position that said that the bill that was passed in 2017 essentially did not give principals unfettered authority to select staff, particularly when it came to substitutes.
But I want a substitute in my classroom. And you're going to
the-
place a licensed staff member in there, and I want a substitute because he does an amazing job. I actually ended up getting him his degree. And, I mean, he's a full-fledged teacher now and now an assistant principal. But I just don't see that would have been a pathway or decision. So it does kind of take away that autonomy.
Well, if I may, John Vallardita, for the record, continue. The Board of Education adopted a regulation that essentially said, if there's an educator in good standing, and it defined what good standing was, and was available for that position, effective or highly effective eval, they're licensed for that position, they're qualified for that, they should be selected before a substitute, okay? That's what the Board of Ed, we agree with that. That's the intent behind the law when it was adopted, so that you did not go out of your way to hire substitutes in lieu of qualified educators that were ready to be placed in a position like that.
So I feel that that takes away the autonomy of staffing. Autonomy of budget. Back in my day, it was before we ever had the ability to carry over money. So it was literally incentivizing to spend, because if not, the district would take it back into their pot. I agree that things need to be spent on students and students potentially of this year. With the labor shortage, I can see where there is that disconnect with that. I think, too, that principals may need more training. So if somehow that can be worked into effective models of delivery. So I mentioned interventionists, or it's difficult, though, when staffing is, at critical levels. And so I'm just wondering, if there's a labor or staff shortage, and 75 million or about that is including vacancies, how does that roll out?
I'm not sure, John Vallardita for the record, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, Senator Buck.
So if 75 million are for vacant positions, then, you can only buy so many programs. A lot of these schools are Title I schools, and so they have a lot of excess federal dollars, too, that maybe come in, and they're using those on programs. But if you don't have the people to hire, how is that going to roll out?
John Vallardita for the record, you mean in terms of how to use the carryover dollars? Mm-hmm. Well, you can use your existing staff for programs, and in some cases, those programs are preschool or after school, to utilize, those resources to provide more instructional time or more training and programs for students to learn.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the committee? Senator Flores.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both for the presentation. I think on the argument that we were just engaging in, I tend to agree. If you're qualified, you're deemed to be adequate, your resume, your file, everything's fine. I absolutely agree that human being should probably be picked over a substitute teacher. And And so I appreciate that dialogue, and I think we're all there. But I do want to engage a little bit on the conversation about giving a little bit of more autonomy to the leadership, right? And I think we've engaged in this conversation before, particularly when it involves money. And I have a tendency, which sometimes I try to control, of kind of thinking of private business and how we run a business and how we kind of prepare for years down the road. We know difficult times are coming. So I'm always just trying to find that balance between ensuring that we are forcing the hand on utilizing money a certain way and the kind of leadership natural tendency of saying, I want to be ready for a difficult tomorrow, whatever that looks like, because we've all been through it. We just got out of it. A lot of us were grossly underprepared, and I'm not talking about just school districts or principals or education. I think in general, all of us realized immediately just how unprepared we were for difficult moments after this pandemic hit. And so, in focusing kind of through that lens, I'm looking at your amendment, and I'm trying to, and I know you've engaged in that conversation already. And if we're gonna repeat anything, I don't want to force you down that road either. But if we could unravel that conversation just a little bit more, I am of the mindset of trying to allow folk in a leadership position to have kind of that responsible approach for that difficult moment tomorrow, and that they're kind of approaching life that way through their leadership stance. So if there's anything that hasn't been said, and I know you just had an exchange with Senator Neal on this very matter, but if there's anything more we can flush out, because that's where I'm right now having a difficult time. Senator or whomever, please.
Rochelle Wynn for the record. I appreciate that, and I echo what John had mentioned before. Like, we're open to, like, finding flexible ways for that money to be spent. I have concerns, again, from that. It was a very fruitful conversation I think we had on Friday in the Joint Senate Ways and Finance Committee. But there was at one point where the superintendent of the Clark County School District asked why Title I schools had lost money. And he said they have carryover dollars, so that's why he's cutting them off from some of those Title I funds. And the fact that we have like school districts that are looking at these carryover funds that these schools are sitting in there and cutting them off from resources because they have carryover funds, I think is also something that we want to avoid. We want to make sure that those schools are fully funded and that they're not being penalized because they saved that money, I guess. And so I think that's why there's some balance between, allowing some carryover of that money. And I think we'd be open to having more flexible ways for them to spend that money. Because I take into consideration what Senator Buck said, that sometimes it's hard to spend that money. And so if we can give more flexibility to make sure that that money is going back to help and following those students like it was intended to do, that's our intention there. As far as the selection of staff and the autonomy, I understand my sister is a school principal, and so she would probably kill me if I took away some of that autonomy that she has. And I think there is some balance. Like in the current law, principals have over 99% like autonomy in their selection of staff. And this, is really addressing that problem where you have qualified licensed staff that are being selected over a principal. And yes, there may be situations where you have like a really qualified, substitute. But I still think that we should value the education, we should value the training, we should value the licensing that these teachers went through in making those selection processes. And hopefully that person, if they are so well informed, they will have mentors like Senator Buck that will encourage them to go on and later go into that field and get that licensing, get that training, and become those leaders in the schools. So that's kind of the intention behind that.
Thank you for that response. And like I said, I agree with the latter portion of the conversation. if we set a minimum criteria of what we think every single educator should meet, and they're meeting that, and then on top of that, everybody's saying they're adequate and they're high performing and they're doing this and this, of course, I agree 100% that that individual should always be selected over an individual who hasn't gone through the minimal criteria that we establish as a state. I'm with you 100%. The only place that I'd like to engage in the conversation, and we're not going to resolve it now and in the interest of time, but if the issue is a responsible school is saying we are going to do X, Y, Z to ensure that we have some additional funds there. And now we have in a presentation a different language, a conversation saying we're not going to give them X, Y, Z funds because they have some rollover money there and that's being utilized to punish them. Then I'm open to the conversation to maybe putting the parameters between that relationship, that even if you're responsible, that should not punish you. And I'm 100% open to that. Or maybe just working a little bit more here, and we can do that offline. But I appreciate the dialogue.
Madam Chair, I have a question, Senator Flores. John Miller did it for the record. So what I am hearing, and maybe this goes to a comment Senator Neal made, that central administration should not force on a school that has carryover dollars to supplant an obligation that Central has to resource some program or some aspect of it. Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah, we're in total support of that.
Thank you. And seeing no further questions, I'll ask you to step back and we will take public comment. We're too late now. We're going to do 2 minutes, and we'll go to the north first. We'll go ahead and start with you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Chair Lang, committee members. For the record, my name is Marie Nisis, and I'm the president of the Clark County Education Association. I'm speaking in support of Senate Bill 282. I was elected to my school organization team during the first 2 years of implementation. I was fortunate to work with an administrator who valued the community's input. We reviewed needed materials, staffing, and ways to meet our students' needs. Unfortunately, this was not the case of many of my colleagues. Since the initial implementation, the SOT process has become more of an advisory committee without any real say in what and how the school's budget will be spent. The SOT process has become nothing more than a rubber stamp committee. Typically, a predetermined school's budget is presented to the SOT. This restricts the SOT members from having input and is not a collaborative effort to improve student outcomes. Many of my colleagues feel their voices are not heard or valued. The SOT members must be empowered and have decision-making authority. Working at a Title I school, we painstakingly try to stretch every dollar to impact student achievement. However, there are schools with millions of dollars in carryover dollars. Our students are in crisis and their educational needs must be prioritized. Carryover funds must be used to meet their needs. Money should benefit students currently enrolled at each precinct, not saved for several years later. As a grandmother to students currently in CCSD, I expect money earmarked for their education to be spent on their education, not to save for a possible rainy day. At some Title I schools, principals struggle to fill all teaching positions. As a third grade teacher, I would have students who had a substitute from kindergarten to second grade. Often, students would have a revolving door of substitutes in one school year. After the normal hiring process has ended, if a principal can't hire a qualified licensed teacher, they must follow the surplus selection of staff per the collective bargaining agreement. If the reorg bill intended to create a committee that understands the needs of their individual precincts, then the SOT must be empowered to have input in the selection of the principal and the budget. SB 282 will help address this and other problematic issues with our current SOT model. I urge you to support SB 282, and we thank Senator Nguyen for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSEA supports SB 282 as introduced. Due to language in Section 1 of the bill clarifying selection of staff shall be done in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement. While we believe language in SB 251 on this same topic is stronger, NSCA is the bigger organization, and we support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kalen Evans, and I'm the president of the Washoe Education Association. We represent all certified professionals in the Washoe County School District. You might be asking why somebody who represents educators from Washoe County would be speaking in support of a bill on SOTs when we actually don't have that current makeup within the Washoe County. The reason that I'm here to speak on this is more the larger message that this bill conveys. In order for us to address the many issues that we're facing in public education, we have to address the culture that exists within individual schools. As all of you know, in any profession, working conditions are everything. Admin that engage their staff in the decisions at their school site create a culture that empowers their employees. Collaboration is crucial for the ability to improve student outcomes. The other portion of this bill that is important to focus on is the idea around carryover dollars. Again, we don't have that same terminology in Washoe, but we have a significant amount of accrued savings due to the teacher vacancies, and all districts do. In Washoe County, we currently, for the first time ever, have accessed those dollars during the school years, and we're using those dollars right now to provide additional compensation for teachers who are above certain caseloads. There are creative ways that we need to use the accrued savings from unfilled positions to support the students and educators in our district, because we have to be very clear. Across the state of Nevada, the students in our schools are being serviced, even though we have a massive teaching shortage, but they're being serviced on the backs of unpaid labor by educators. And so we need to do everything we can right now to use those resources to support students and educators in the class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Lang and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, representing the Vegas Chamber. We are in support of SB 282 as we believe this bill will provide additional parent empowerment in our schools, lending more of a voice in educational decisions. And we also believe that this will bring more dollars into our classrooms. We urge your support. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Vegas.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kenny Belknap. I'm a high school social studies teacher at Liberty High School, and I am the CCA treasurer. I'm speaking today in favor of SB 282 and the changes it makes, and I can tell you from my lived experience that these changes are desperately needed. When passed, AB 469 gave site principals unprecedented control over their budgets. The hope was that these administrators who work in the schools would know what their school communities need and use these funds from the state to move the needle on student achievement. I can tell you from firsthand experience, that just isn't the case. CCSD schools are projected to roll over $270 million this year alone, most of which is located in our most needy schools. These principals decide unilaterally to set up these pseudo savings accounts instead of using that money to reduce class sizes, hire more teachers, or to implement intervention strategies to help students get to grade level. Money is given each year to teach students that year, not to hold on to just in case. Not only are CCSD administrators sitting on money, when they do decide to spend it, some are prioritizing to reduce their own workload rather than helping students. For example, my previous school had a population of just over 2,000 students. They currently employ 8 administrators and 6 teachers on special assignment outside of the classroom, all while having long-term subs in several classrooms of critical need. Compared to my current school, which has a population of over 3,000 students, we have only 6 administrators and 1 teacher on special assignment. Why is this disparity allowed to occur? Why does a school with 1,000 less students need more central office? This is because we let one person decide the budget. Do you think the parents at my last school would want more people being paid not to work directly with kids? More administrators do not move the needle on student performance. More licensed educators and education support professionals do. We must put a check on how these principals are building these budgets. Otherwise, this historic investment you all are making is going to go to more administrators on campus, more teachers doing the work of these administrators, and kids still struggling to learn in the largest class sizes in the nation. I urge you all to support SB 282. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next one, please.
Greetings, committee chair and members. My name is Christopher DiPaolo, staff for CCEA, reading on behalf of member Erica Jackson. I'm a veteran educator of 25 years with Clark County School District and a member of Clark County Education Association. I urge your support of SB 282 for multiple reasons. First, I have served as SOT chairperson for 5 years and 3 administrators. In that time, we have simply given input on budgets created by administration before providing a rubber stamp approval. There was a lack of collaboration, and SOTs are currently advisory committees, which was not the intent of the reorganization bill. Further, my school has undergone principal vacancies twice, with the first resulting in the superintendent appointing someone of his liking, and no SOT interview process is written into the law. The second resulted in our choice being honored, but only at the pleasure of the superintendent, and not due to the intended power of our elected team. Second, some administrators act in bad faith to work around our contractual surplus transfer rights. They leave positions vacant or block them with long-term subs to avoid having a teacher they did not hire. It's a shameful practice my union has been battling for several years. It erodes confidence, trust, and morale. It reduces desire to promote the employer, creates turnover in a critically short workforce, adds to sub shortage, and prevents classrooms from having licensed educators. It increases class size and ultimately harms students. Administrators must honor our contract, and any uncertainty in the law must be eliminated. Finally, we all love a rainy day fund like the Education Stabilization Account, but education in Nevada is already underfunded and understaffed. Carryover money must be used on students and in the year it was given. While admins build a nest egg for whatever they desire, teachers are not supplied with needed resources, and many spend their own funds to compensate. This is unacceptable. As educators in the building elected by our colleagues, we need real voting power to create positive change for staff, students, and families. Please vote to move this bill out of committee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Next person.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Spicer. I'm a staff member of CCEA, and today I'm reading on behalf of educator Sandy Cooper. Good afternoon, Chair Lang and the members of the committee. My name is Sandy Cooper, and I'm a member of CCEA. I have worked in the Clark County School District for the past 23 years, and during my time, I have seen the principals become more powerful while licensed educators and support professionals become less powerful. Since the creation of the SOTs, I have seen principals support their agendas and not work with the rest of the school staff as a team. Many times I have heard principals refer to the school as, quote, my school, when in reality, the school is not one person, but a team of professionals. This has never been more obvious as when the school's budget is being planned. As a member of the SOT, I realize that the principal has all of the power and the rest of the people on the committee are powerless. We simply sit and listen to how the principal wants to spend the school's money and have no power to make any changes. We are simply and sometimes politely dismissed. This autonomy has led to principals spending money in wasteful ways. If the SOT had the power to pass or not pass the budget created by the principals, the money could be used in a more effective manner, like staffing, for example. Passing SB 282 will help to ensure that students have their needs met instead of the school becoming top-heavy with licensed adults who do not meet with or provide intervention to students who are in need. The way we better educate children and improve test scores is to empower and equip teachers with the tools and resources that they need. I do not need another adult telling me how to do my job. What I need are supplies and resources so that I can do my job effectively. More voice on the SOT would allow us to more effectively do our jobs and educate our children. Thank you for your time, Sandy Cooper, 5th grade teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for the opportunity. A lot of our educators are still in school. So my name is Francesca Petrucci, and I'll be reading a letter from a frontline educator. My name is Christina Hollowood. I am a high school special education teacher, parent of 2 CCSD students, and a member of CCEA. I currently serve as a parent member of a middle school SOT and previously served as a licensed staff member and chair of a middle school SOT. I also served as a committee member on the Nevada Legislature Working Group on school organizational teams and other issues relating to the reorganization of CCSD. I support 282 for multiple reasons. When SOTs were first formed, I had great hopes that they would involve meaningful work and that I could make a difference in the lives and education of my students. I envisioned all the programs and opportunities I would be able to help bring to them. I studied our school operating plan and budget relentlessly. When the budget was presented to us by our principal, I risked alienating her because I strongly believed that a budget with off-ratio administrators instead of teachers was not best for our students. I was concerned about class sizes in math and ELA classes and the dwindling options for electives. For multiple years, the principal chose to increase administrative staffing at the expense of licensed support staff and educator positions. I voted against every budget, knowing that my vote was meaningless. After 3 years, my principal invited me to leave the building. After that disillusioning experience, I struggled to see the value of participating in another SOT. This year, my son transitioned to middle school, and I saw the SOT as a way to be involved. Again, I researched the budget and other documents, but instead of feeling like an engaged parent, my new SOT responsibilities feel like they are in name only. We are presented with plans and a budget. We're allowed to ask questions, but once again, the SOT is merely a check mark on a to-do list for the administrator. The only votes we are taking are related to opening and closing meetings and approving minutes for those meetings. I ask you to support the changes included in SB 282 and allow the SOT members to be the meaningful change agents we were meant to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person.
Buenas tardes, Chairwoman Lang and members of this committee. My name is Fernando Romero. I belong to 3 SOTs. I ironically came here to accompany my wife on another issue and had no idea that this bill was even being brought up. The SOTs that I belong to, and I'm assuming the 300 and some odd others are never informed as to what is going on. Again, I am sitting here and totally surprised as to what is being said, and also the things that are being brought up that make no sense. You talk about community members being a voting member. I am a community member for all 3 SOTs. I do not have a vote. I had a vote when I was the chair of the ECTA SOT. And even then, the process when we hired a principal was not close to what has been said and what is supposed to be done according to the to AB 469. The administration for Clark County School District has been micromanaging the whole affair, where to the point where the deputy superintendent of our area would admonish the principal of one of the schools, in this case Global Community High School, anytime she contacted any of us, members of the SOT, and they really are the ones that wanted to do the administering of everything that deals with the high schools. In fact, the principals, at least to the schools that I belong to, have no vote either. So I don't know, again, why we were not advised or informed that this was taking place, but it is of no surprise to me that this is going on and this is happening. From what I have been hearing, I am in support of SB 282, but with the admonishment that we or the legislature should be made very much aware whether or not the Clark County School District is adhering to the law. They have not. In every meeting that I went to
Mr. Romero?
for the school board.
I'm sorry, your time is up. Could you submit the rest of your comments in writing?
Again, I didn't know this was
Oh.
even happening, but I certainly will place a number of things in writing.
That would be
hoping
terrific.
that you do follow what is being said and look into the administering of AB 469.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you so much. Any more testimony in favor? Is there anyone on the phone, BPS?
Testify in support of SB 282. Or raise your hand in the Zoom window or press *9 to take your place in the queue.
Hello, this is Josiah Davison. For the record, I'm a CCA Executive Board member. I'm calling to voice my support for AB 282, among other reasons. When SOTs Recommendations for principals are ignored. A principal may be placed who does not fit the school and can destroy school culture and wreck achievements at the school. The SOT must have more power. For this and other reasons, I'm in support of SB 282. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and distinguished members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jim Frazee. I'm a classroom teacher in CCSD, and I have the honor of being Vice President of CCEA. I would like to thank Senator Wynn for sponsoring this important piece of legislation. The point of the original law, AB 469, was to prevent the breakup of the district by breaking it down to its most basic level, the school community itself. The empowerment of a school's stakeholders, parents, staff, and students. As with every new law, adjustments become necessary to ensure their original intent of the legislation is achieved. The vast majority of schools have embraced the spirit of original law and have become truly cooperative endeavors. This bill addresses some of the holdouts and other unforeseen consequences. This bill would stop the practice of our superintendent superseding the will of parents and staff by ignoring their recommendations regarding the selection of a new principal in favor of his person. Like every other organization, you can always tell a school's priorities by where they put their money. This bill enables all stakeholders to have a meaningful voice in the budget process. Student achievement cannot be fully realized unless there is a basic belief that the school stakeholders' voices will be heard and valued. I urge you to support this bill, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Tirsa Ballman. I'm a teacher. I'm a librarian here at Orr Middle School, and I'm calling in support of SB 282. The bill covers equity within the building, and it also speaks directly to, as we've heard of, the school SOT and the makeup of the building and decisions that are made within the building. We do have an SOT here at our school, and it is set up the way that it was meant to be set up. However, it's padded with people that are friends of our administration. So we took a group of people that were all friends together. They go from the instructional leadership team to the school organizational team. And that is how they basically have become a clique or a group of people that, you know, they do make the financial decisions for our school. Well, the principal makes them and they just sign off on them. Also, we have several open positions here at this school that have been vacant throughout the year. And one of the positions that has been vacant all year long is Reading 6. We did have a long-term sub in there who was a relative of one of our instructional coaches. And this person left in order to take a job closer to home due to the extreme expectations here for some of us. Once the sub left, all but 2 sections of our classes were dissolved into other ELA and Reading 6 sections, taking the classes from teachable levels of, you know, in the high 20s to all of them being over 36. I myself as a librarian, I have 2 reading sections as my own. Beyond that, we lost our health teacher last semester, and again, a full-time sub was placed in this particular classroom. And although she's an amazing sub, she's unable to be with the students here. I'm here and not there because, well, this is my Wednesday health class. And again, I am the librarian. Rather than put any of the instructional coaches back into classrooms or having them share sections that you know, of other things that they're licensed to be teaching, then they were simply given to me. And I understand that there's a fiscal reason for this because you can take me, a librarian, I don't have to have a prep and put me into a room and have me teach and cover classes.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
And you don't have to.
Ma'am, your
What's
2
that, hon?
minutes is up. Could you submit the rest of your testimony in writing for us?
Yes, I've said, yeah. Who do I submit it to, hon?
You can submit it to our committee manager. Just one
Okay.
sec, I'll get you the email.
Okay.
She doesn't have
Thank
an
you.
agenda. Okay, it's SENEDU at sen, www.state.nv.us. Okay? Okay, thank you. Next caller, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Brian Wachter. I'm calling today on behalf of myself and the parents of the Clark County School District. I currently chair two SOTs in CCSD, an elementary school and a middle school, and I serve as a community rep to a high school. I'm very much in favor of Senate Bill 282. It will actually provide some teeth and accountability into the reorg. As an example, in one of my SOTs during this most recent budget cycle, we were presented with a budget that had no numbers. And it was a very abstract budget. And as an SOT, we are currently not in a position to be able to decline or to even suggest that the principal goes back and gives us a budget that perhaps has some more substance to it. So I think this is very important. In regards to the conceptual amendment, entirely agree that there should be some guardrails. From my experience, though, in the scarcity mindset of the Clark County School District, 1% as the trigger to move over and put those funds in the state is very low. We, I think, are very cognizant that stability and consistency is important for our students. And when we have such dramatic fluctuations from year to year, I think that really has detrimental effect to the social emotional learning as well as the atmosphere and the safe and learning environment that we are attempting to provide at all of our schools. So highly encourage you to support Senate Bill 282. We thank the sponsor very much and we urge its approval.
Thank you so much. Are there any more callers, BPS?
If you have just joined us and would like to testify in support of SB 282, press star 9 or raise your hand in the Zoom window to take your place in the queue.
Caller, you're unmuted. Please begin.
Thank you, Chair Lang and members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Teresa Schultz, and I am a school counselor at Bruner Elementary School in North Las Vegas, which is Title I, Tier 1, and a member of the CCEA. I am urging you to support SB 282. SOTs were designed to give stakeholders a voice and a say in what happens at their school. This year, I sit on two elementary SOTs, one as a parent and one as an educator. Both function similarly. While a chairperson was selected in September, the principal or assistant principal sets the agenda and runs all the meetings. Agendas are shared on the day of the meeting, so we have no time to review them before the meeting. One school follows Robert Rules of Order, while the other one has no idea how to use them. When the budgets were presented, all decisions were already made by administration, and all they did was ask us if we had questions. We listened to the plans and voted to accept them because what other power did we really have? The SOT is merely a place to get information and stay abreast of school happenings, not for decision making for us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Caller, last 3 digits 803. Press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller, you're
Good
unmuted.
afternoon, member. Yes. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Dan Price. I'm a CTE teacher at Sunrise Mountain High School and a proud member of the Clark County Education Association. I'm here today to speak in support of Senate Bill 282. I have always taught at a Title I, Tier 1 school, along with that comes significant funding to ensure our students have access to curriculum, resources, technology, out-of-school opportunities, remediation, tutoring, summer programs, and so on. With that comes the accountability. I have served on our school SOT since its inception and been the chair of the committee all those years. If I didn't remind my principal of the meeting each month and set the agenda date, it might not happen. I take the role on the committee very seriously and have been selected on this team because my colleagues know I will speak my mind and do what is best for our school. Two issues we deal with frequently on the SOT are carryover dollars and staff shortages. We, like many schools in our demographic, find that we have significant carryover dollars and attrition money each year. Carryover dollars allow us to do things at our school that many other schools cannot. Our students with the greatest need deserve to have those funds spent on them the year they are allocated. The year those students are in our building for the purpose they are intended. We discuss student achievement, but if a student needs extra help, materials, supplies, tutoring, money to pay for fees, in addition to the buildings, should be able to demonstrate that students are benefiting from these extra funds shown by growth and achievement, especially in ELA and math. Schools do not need to save money up for special projects or expensive murals done by professionals. They need to have oversight by the SOT and know these funds are going to be used by the
Sir?
school that year. Finally, I would like to address the issue of staff selection and educators who are in surplus. We have faced a critical shortage of licensed qualified educators every year. There is absolutely no reason that any teacher who goes into surplus is not hired by a school with the big guts.
I'm sorry, but your time is up. I'm wondering if you could submit the rest of your comments in writing.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Next caller, please.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Adler. I am a 25-year veteran Spanish and ELL teacher at Sunrise Mountain High School and a proud member of the Clark County Education Association, and I'm here to speak in support of SB 282. The intent of the law that created the formation of school organizational teams at each school site was to assist principals in the decision-making process. I have served on my school's SOT for 6 of those 7 years. And instead of evolving and offering more support to principals, I've seen that the SOT simply serves to vote in favor of the principal and not have a real role or voice in any decision-making capacity. When my school had a principal vacancy, we were fully anticipated a process where the SOT would interview candidates and make a recommendation. This process never took place, and we were given a principal who had been an assistant chief superintendent who needed a new position due to downsizing. There was no discussion, no explanation, just a new principal with no input. The SOT wasn't even given the courtesy of being informed that this would happen prior to the staff being told. Another middle school was given the same level of disrespect when they went through the process of interviewing all the candidates who applied and chose one just to have the superintendent disregard the SOT's decision and selected one of the candidates that was the last choice of the SOT. As a result, the culture and climate of that school was decimated and the many teachers left the school. Why have SOTs if they have absolutely no impact on the school's decision-making process and inevitably hurts children? If SOTs are to have any impact, they must be provided with more oversight and more power to ensure that budgets are used to hire more educators and support staff that have a direct impact on student achievement. My school has 9 administrators. 9. If we had outstanding achievement, high graduation rates, good attendance, low incidence of suspensions and expulsions, minimal fights, students who arrive at school and attend class on time, I would be fine with this amount of leadership. This is not the case. If the SOTs have more authority, they could have more input on budget decisions, including staffing.
Ma'am.
Please support SB 282, and thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
My name is Robert Hollywood. I'm a proud executive board member of the Clark County Education Association. I am testifying today in support of SB 282. I've been elected to my school's organizational team in each year since the implementation of the reorganization law. During this time, my school had a principal retiring. It was extremely important to our school community to have the opportunity to select the incoming leader for our building. It took a tremendous amount of effort in our school community, much of it from our parent-teacher organization, to allow the SOT to interview candidates put forward by the district and then recommend one from that pool in 2017. Though ultimately the district hired the candidate our team chose, they could have overridden our decision, as has been the case at many school sites. Our school experienced a great 4 years with the leader we chose. School climate was second to none. We made gains on already strong academic results. The SOT, under that chosen leader, took part in the decision-making on the school budget and the plan of operation for the school. There was buy-in to what we were doing from the stakeholders in our community because we were involved in the decision-making. Our elementary school was no stranger to school-based governance, having spent some years as an empowerment school before establishing the SOT in the reorganization law. After years of implementation, it's time to empower the SOTs with some real authority. The decision-making authority is essential to the SOT. At schools where the SOT has not been afforded treatment as a stakeholder and decision-maker, being a team member is nearly meaningless. It comes as a one-way presentation for a stakeholder of one, the building principal. No consensus building, no engagement. These teams should be empowered to take a meaningful vote on the budget and the plan of operation.
Thank you, sir.
The SOT.
Thank you. Your time is up. Could you submit the rest of your comments in writing?
Yes, I will.
I appreciate you. Next caller, please.
Chair, there are no more callers willing to testify in support at this time.
Okay, so we'll move to opposition. Is there anyone in Carson City that wants to speak in opposition, and anyone in Las Vegas that wants to speak in opposition? Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Danny Thompson, today representing the Clark County Association of School Administrators. When I first came to this building a long time ago, there were no rules. There was no 120-day limit. There were no rules on bills. You could get a bill on the last day. In fact, I've been in this building on July the 4th serving. There were no rules on fundraising. I've attended fundraisers in that closed hotel across the street during the session, paid to go to a fundraiser and appear before the committee that I just gave a contribution to. The legislature over the years has fixed all of those things and stopped those practices. I can think of occasions when I was here then where a very powerful individual come to the legislature because they had a lawsuit at the Supreme Court and said, give me a bill to settle that lawsuit in my favor. The legislature, in their infinite wisdom, chose not to do that because the legislature has unlimited power. You can do things not because they're right or wrong, just because you can. You are the legislature. You do write the laws. But the appearance of that, of impropriety, was just too great. And so I can't think of an occasion where the legislature crossed that line. Today, this bill, and there are 4 of them that are before this committee, and we spoke about one last week, in Section 1 of this bill, that's the exact circumstance. That issue is before the Supreme Court. My client has spent over $200,000 in the past 3 years getting it there. When the law was changed, the Principals Association, School Administrators Association adjusted their collective bargaining agreement to reflect the current law. If you pass this bill with Section 1 in it, you are settling that lawsuit. And someone testified before this committee last week that it would make it a moot issue. It will not make it a moot issue. You will be taking sides in that lawsuit. I would urge you to set Section 1 aside, and I think the other provisions of the bill can be dealt with with the parties, but I'd urge you to set Section 1 aside until that lawsuit is settled, until the court has heard the case. They just
Thank
haven't
you,
ruled.
Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Lang and members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Jeff Horn, and I'm the Executive Director of the Clark County Association of School Administrators and Professional and Technical Employees, also known as CASAPI. We represent over 1,450 CCSD administrators, of which nearly 98% are members. CASAPI is opposed to SB 282. SB 282 would change the law to allow bargaining units the right to force place staff at a school without the consent of the principal. Sadly, this section of AB 469 from 2017 has never been enforced. On the other hand, CASAPI, to the detriment of our own members, changed our CBA to align ourselves with AB 469 and ensure that only the principal can select other administrators at their site. An administrator can never be force placed at a school without the approval or consent of the principal. We believe that only the most impactful educators should be in front of students and staff. SB 282 will place unrealistic expectations on building principals, as it will require 75% of the organizational team to approve the school's plan of operation. This simply creates unneeded red tape and layers of bureaucracy. There already exists an appeal process in 388G that allows SOT to challenge or request changes to the school's plan of operation. SB 282 will require the principal to become a voting member of the SOT, which contradicts the relationship that is meant to take place between the principal and SOT members. Further, CASAPI believes that the superintendent, after consultation and advisement from the SOT, should have the final say in selecting the position of principals. And lastly, the newly added conceptual amendment placing restrictions on the carry-forward balance will again hurt students and the principal's ability to hire effective staff. Vacancy dollars, as well as approved purchases that have already been encumbered but not yet expensed, should not be included in the carry-forward balance. CASAPI believes that administrators should be held accountable for student outcomes. It is time to provide them with the responsibility to do so.
Thank you,
for your
sir.
time.
Next speaker, please.
Patricia Haddad, Director of Government Relations for Clark County School District. So principals working with educators and families on behalf of student outcomes is the foundation of meaningful interaction, dialogue, and input at the school site level. What exists in current law facilitates that goal through the balanced relationship between school organizational teams, building principals and their supervisors, and the central office. The expertise and input of parents, staff, and community represented by SOTs are critical components of a principal selection decision codified in NRS currently. Counter to the proposal in this bill, however, we believe SOTs should maintain the current authority to provide advice and input on the selection of a principal. Also, while the list of qualifications provided in this bill incorporate important qualities, it also removes the autonomy of the SOTs to identify the core competencies they believe are most critical for their school community. Prescribing job descriptions for hiring in law is overreach. Further, requiring 75% of members to vote on a recommendation or approve a budget, though only a simple majority is required for quorum, lacks continuity with the existing law. Now, of course, school budgets are unique to a school community's composition of leaders, students, and educators, and to a particular moment in time. With the input of the SOT, principals are well positioned to make budget determinations. And as our folks that were presenting in other conversations have called for accountability for the school district with outcomes within 12 months. We ask, how will their call for accountability be borne by SOTs and parents if there are delegated decisions typically reserved for the school district? Finally, just quickly in closing, the increase in ending fund balances go far beyond, I think, what any of us are used to. And we as a central office and as the school district want to ensure that those dollars are spent on supporting students. But we honor the fact that this legislature has made an intentional decision to provide this latitude to the local school precinct. That said, CCSD is open to having additional discussions regarding parameters for these dollars and how they're spent. However, we cannot put building leaders and SOTs in a position where they're forced to expend funds in ways that are not strategic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. AJ Lapp on behalf of Nevada Association of School Administrators. We're going to echo many of the sentiments of the prior opposition. I'd like to say that we have met with the bill sponsor. It was a fruitful conversation, in our opinion. We look forward to working with her in the future, and we thank her for that opportunity. And with that, I'll conclude my testimony.
I love the word echo. Thank you so much. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to speak against? BPS, is there anyone on the phone?
testify in opposition of SB 282, press star 9 or raise your hand in the Zoom window to take place in the queue.
Caller, you're unmuted.
Hello? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, hi. Thank you, committee members. Gary Bugash, principal, Clark County School District Middle School. I wanted to address the three issues since I haven't heard from a principal as of yet. The first is SOT empowerment. I cannot really talk about hiring the principal because I have not been involved with that. But as far as buy-in from the community, it is important that we understand that schools are a reflection of the community. The SOT are community members, and by presenting budgets to them and getting suggestions from them prior to the meeting is key. I do that every year before I send my budgets in. Also, I present it to the staff for any input from the staff as well. So by changing anything that the SOT does, I think that would be building specific. We heard Senator Wynn explain that she had a great experience with the principal and then not so great experience. Unfortunately, that occurs. As far as the carryover money goes, understand that we've been living in an underfunded situation for a number of years. I've been a principal now at my school for 9 years, 14 years in the Clark County School District. And I currently believe that the money should stay with the students that it's allocated for that year. Unfortunately, when funding is cut or Title I funding is lost, which is my case for next school year, I have to use that carryover money so I don't lose staff and increase class sizes. So touching anything with carryover money, I do not recommend doing anything with that. The schools need that money, and keep in mind that it does go for staffing and reducing class size.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
You're the best. Please submit the rest of your comments in writing. Next caller, please.
Chair, there are no more callers willing to testify in opposition at this time.
That's great. Is there anyone in neutral on the phones? And if there's anyone in neutral in the room, go ahead and come to the front.
To testify neutral to SB 282, press star 9 to take your place in the queue or raise your hand in the Zoom window.
Okay, I see someone in Las Vegas. Go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Snyder. I'm the commissioner of the Government Employee Management Relations Board. And the issue of what to do with the surplus teachers in the pool was that litigation came before our board. And I just want to alert the members of the committee that I did put a one-page write-up on the history of that litigation, both before our board and in the courts, the 8th Judicial District Court, and also what's pending now before the Nevada Supreme Court. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak in neutral? If not, Senator Wynn, if you'd like. Nope, she's good. Okay, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 282. Where is Senator? Okay. Okay, President Sandoval, President Whitfield, and President Pollard. Senator Canizaro has to be at a finance meeting, and so she has a bill today too. And I'm wondering if you are all okay to hold out for just a little bit longer while we do her bill, and then we'll get to, because I want the bill for you 438 to get the time that it needs. Okay. Is that good in Las Vegas? Okay, good deal. Okay, Senator Canizaro will be here in a minute. We'll go ahead and start a work session in the interest of time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen Sturm Gaynor, Committee Policy Analyst. As a reminder, as nonpartisan staff, I can neither support nor oppose any measure. The first bill on work session today is Senate Bill 80, which was sponsored by this committee on behalf of the Nevada Youth Legislature. We heard this bill on March 15th. The bill defines provider of health care and expands certain policies adopted by the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association. Additionally, SB 80 requires school districts, a governing body of charter school, a university school for profoundly gifted pupils, and private school to adopt such a policy and create and distribute a brochure concerning the prevention and treatment of injuries to the head. Public and private schools must establish a concussion management team to perform certain duties prescribed in the policy, and certain employees of these schools must complete training related to head injuries. Finally, the bill provides that a person who willfully fails to perform the duties outlined in the bill is guilty of a misdemeanor, and there are no proposed amendments at this time. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved by Senator Flores. Do I have a second? A second from Senator Neal. And that is a do pass, yes. Okay, all those in favor? Oh, any questions? I'm sorry, comments?
Thank you.
Senator Titus.
As much as I appreciate this bill and the intent of the bill, I think that unfortunately I'm going to be a no on it. The blanket requirements, the misdemeanor fines, all of those things, I just feel are not at this time appropriate. So I'm going to be a no. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Titus. Anyone else? Senator Hammond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I had one question during the hearing, and I see that it hasn't been addressed at all, and so I'm going to be a no now with a chance that I might change my mind by the time I get to the floor in case there's any changes to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the motion on the floor is to do pass by Senator Flores, a second by Senator Neal. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, 2 against Senator Titus and Senator Hammond. Motion carries. Congratulations. That is our youth legislator bill, so congratulations. Okay. Senator Flores, will you carry the floor statement?
Yes.
Okay, Senator Canizaro's here, so we'll stop work session and go into and open the hearing for Senate Bill 291. Senator Canizaro, when you're ready, we're ready for you.
Sometimes I need just a second to catch my breath here. Breathing for 2. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nicole Canizaro, and I represent Senate District 6 in the northwest portion of the Las Vegas Valley. And I am excited to be here today to present to you Senate Bill 291, which seeks to make it possible for student teachers to receive substitute pay while completing their coursework in higher education, and provides funding to allow the University of Nevada, Las Vegas student cohorts at the Nevada Institute on Teaching and Educator Preparation, or NITEP, to continue their educator preparation program. I would like to share just a little bit of background with you regarding NITEP. This program was instituted during the 2017 legislative session and funded each legislative session thereafter via an appropriation. NITEP recruits the best and brightest students to be part of this intensive and hands-on teacher preparation program. These students also make a commitment to begin their teaching careers in Nevada, which is incredible because we know that we want to continue to recruit and retain the best teachers right here in my home state, where I also was a product of the education system throughout my entire educational career here. Before I turn the microphone over to my co-presenters, I would like to do a quick run-through of the bill, if that is okay with the committee. So Section 1 removes the requirement that a student teacher must have completed at least 4 weeks of student teaching in order to qualify for employment as a substitute teacher. Additionally, the bill makes an appropriation from the state general fund of $1,575,000 to Nevada's Department of Education for NITEP and requires reporting to the legislature on each expenditure made from these funds. Chair Lang, that concludes my portion of the presentation of Senate Bill 291. And at this time, I would like to introduce UNLV College of Education Dean Danica Hayes and Dr. Kenneth Varner. Both of these individuals have been working with the NITEP program for the past few years and will share with you the growth and success that have occurred there with that program and those teachers that are coming up in it. After their remarks, we are of course happy to take any questions that you or the committee may have, and I just want to thank everyone for their time and consideration of what I truly do feel is a very important piece of legislation that really is designed to help those budding educators and help keep them right here in Nevada. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over to my co-presenters.
Please go ahead.
Dr. Kenneth Varner, UNLV College of Education Associate Dean for Academic Programs and Initiatives. Can you see our display? Oh, there it is. It's like looking at, there we go. There we go. In the interest of time and given just consideration, we've presented last year at an interim committee on some of the history, and today we're talking about the multi-institutional approach that we've been using through NITEP and ESSER funds and NIPER, which is the Nevada Institute on Educator Preparation, Retention, and Research. Just a little bit about the students in this program. Currently, we have worked with about 117 fellows, 60% of whom are from underrepresented groups. And we also this year, through the addition of the NIPER funds, were able to expand the reach of NITEP to be multi-institutional. One of the concerns that we had is that because it was running through UNLV, we didn't want it to be a UNLV program. It is the Nevada Institute of. Therefore, we've worked with our partners at both the University of Nevada, Reno, and Nevada State to be able to meaningfully include our new cohort of fellows this year, which were 15 from each institution in a first-of-a-kind collaboration that actually later when we get to another bill was part of the launching pad for that work. A little bit about the faculty involvement. It's involved over 6,000 hours of mentoring and support from 25 faculty members and staff. We've also been able to fund 16 research mini grants. One of the benefits of NITEP is it's just not a student support. It's also the ability for students to participate as co-researchers with faculty on research questions that aim to understand pressing questions around the recruitment, preparation, retention of teachers. And we have 18 unique partnerships with 10 different organizations, including Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth, Boys and Girls Club, Public Ed Foundation, Nevada Partners, et cetera. In terms of the student impact, beyond the regular program that students in NITEP experience through just their academic programming, NITEP fellows have also had over 14,000 hours of engagement, which include educational engagement beyond what their programs can typically provide for them. Those include tutoring programs with MGM through a public-private partnership, supporting mental health and wellness development, working on English language acquisition and development through a digital partnership with schools in Chile, as well as advocacy and education, where students have been able to understand complex educational issues. We also have community engagement, so one of the ideas is just not to prepare them for the realities of the classroom, but also for the communities that they serve. Again, through partnership with Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth, we were able to get candidates working with community partners. We run a homework hotline to support schools after school where students need help and teachers aren't available as well. Finally, two other components. We have embedded professional development that brings national experts along with local experts, and together they deliver interactive professional development that we've been able to deploy statewide, and not just for NITEP fellows, including our NITEP fellows outside of Clark County, but also making this available to educators statewide through online mechanisms. So the reach of NITEP isn't just for the participants themselves. Through these initiatives, we've been able to extend professional development elsewhere. And finally, we've been able to incorporate these meaningful research projects for students and faculty to look at issues, for example, of teacher identity, teacher retention, building teacher leadership capacity in Nevada, and supporting the development of school leaders of color, which is really fascinating, and Dean Hayes can speak to this, but seeing our students being able to deploy really complex research skills as undergraduate students who are going to be teachers, put them in a great position to become data-informed leaders in their own schools, where we've heard a lot this session around the lack of accountability in data reporting. We're preparing through NITEP students who can take on the challenge of making sure that they hold themselves accountable for student learning. And finally, we've been able to embed micro-credentials as a way of supporting not just NITEP fellows, but all educators statewide to provide online asynchronous learning, focusing on Title I, and expanding the parental involvement and family engagement requirements that NDE requires for teacher licensure. So we have courses on homelessness and housing vulnerability, literacy, STEM, English language learning, and data-informed instruction. And not only do NITEP fellows benefit from this, but through partnership, we've been able to get these courses to teachers statewide and help NITEP's reach. Last two things to say. Our strengths are that we're able to recruit a diverse set of students to this, provide them preparation experiences beyond what traditional higher ed programs can provide. We're able to focus on retention and helping support them with wraparound to think about their first 3 years in their career. And we've been responsible stewards of the money. I think in the past there were questions around NITEP's effectiveness. And in the last session when we took over, when Dean Hayes became dean and I took over NITEP, we've really been serious about the accountability for the financial investment of this and making sure that we are expending the funds and expending them well in the preparation of teachers. Our challenges are around expanding partnerships, and we look forward to all NSHE institutions being able to work with us in partnership to have their students benefit from NITEP and having stable funding. In the last session, this was funded through emergency bill. It wasn't funded, and we're very thankful to Senator Cannizzaro for approaching this in a way that creates stability for the students in the program. Waiting every 2 years to see if the funding will be there is a challenge in a 4-year program to make sure that there's continuity of the experience. And so we're really thankful for the opportunity, and I'll turn it over to Dean Hayes.
Thank you, Danica Hayes, for the record, and I'm going to be brief because as a former pregnant person, I want to respect your bathroom breaks, Senator Cannizzaro. I will just reiterate what Dr. Varner mentioned about the impact of this program and the evolution of the program, and we've evolved from scholarships to a more community-embedded program that involves multiple institutions, and we continue to expect to grow in that area. And this program has had not only a ripple effect in terms of the number of educators who benefit from the various components of NITEP, but a ripple effect in terms of direct educational services. As you can see from some of the components, we are reaching far into our community and working with our kids as these educators are learning to be educators. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cannizzaro, do you have any more presenters?
No, Madam Chair. Nicole Cannizzaro, Senate District 6. We are ready to answer any questions that you or the committee may have.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the bill. Conceptually, I think it's not a bad idea. However, I need some clarification. In the bill, it states that the licensed teacher must be available to assist and observe the student teacher on a periodic basis. How often is that?
So the addition of the language around this, sorry, Kenny Varner for the record. Thank you, Senator Titus. So this language is addressing the gap where student teachers, so while they're in NITEP, one portion of their NITEP program is while they're student teaching, and that's where they have the restrictions. So they follow all the rules of student teachers. They're observed twice at least by the university, as well as on semesterly, and this is statewide, as well as by their cooperating teachers and often building-based principals during student teaching.
So
you're asking
just
about the student
twice?
teaching.
I mean, how often are they observed when they're student teaching? Is another teacher always in the classroom?
There's so they're always with a licensed professional for the student teaching.
So if they're always with a licensed professional, then we're actually paying two people to be in that classroom?
Sometimes Kenny
So
Varner
it's
for
doubling the
record,
cost?
Kenny Varner for the record. So sometimes while they're student teaching, after 4 weeks, they're eligible to be long-term subs, and principals have been able to have people go to other classrooms and serve as substitutes on a limited basis.
But this bill's changing that. They don't have to have 4 weeks now, so right from the start, they're in the classroom by themselves?
Kenny Varner for the record, and it's accompanying the work of the Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching program, which is allowing school support professionals and other folks to pursue student teaching through their normal course of employment, and typically they hadn't been able to earn income while they were student teaching, and so this sort of is trying to address that gap a little bit as well, and not making them wait 4 weeks before they could do it. There was a lot of restrictions around folks' ability to afford to be able to student teach if they were working, if they had to lose the income. Incentivizing Pathways to Teaching already funds them, and this allows them to earn that in the first 4 weeks.
Follow up on that, Madam Chair? Yes. Thank you. So none of this, so if they're treated as a student teacher, they don't get paid into PERS, they don't get any benefits from that. Is that correct?
Kenny Varner for the record, I don't believe I'm qualified to answer that question.
Could you answer that, please? Legal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. I do believe, I'd have to look up the specific provision. I believe there's a provision in Chapter 286 of NRS that explicitly excludes substitute teachers from qualifying for PERS, but I can find that reference.
Thank you. And again, just in the background, certainly as an intern, I received a salary, a stipend to be an intern, and I understand that, graduate medical students and also many graduate students at the university system need to be able to survive to do that. On student teachers, they haven't graduated yet with their degree, correct? Or is this in order to get their license, they have to do a student teaching, but they've already graduated with their teaching certificate?
Kenny Varner for the record, graduate students with an alternative route to licensure do not need to complete student teaching if they've met the requirements for an ARL license. Those pursuing a standard license do need to complete student teaching.
Before they get their degree?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I get the students working so they can get paid, but I guess this is kind of following along with Senator Titus. Where do they make up the 4 weeks of teaching?
Kenny Varner for the record. Sorry, Senator Neal, I'm not sure that I fully understand the question.
The way that the law was written, they needed to have completed at least 4 weeks of student teaching and then go in to the school. Now we want to make sure that they're getting paid. That's great. But where along the pathway do they get those 4 weeks so that when they're standing in front of the kid, they actually have some kind of content information to teach from?
Kenny Varner for the record, at least at UNLV, our intention isn't that they become long-term subs. It's the ability to earn 1 or 2 days a week, something like that. So it's not a substitute for their student teaching. They're still doing their student teaching in many cases. There are different tracks and programs. So our paraprofessionals, for example, they're employed already in districts and working as paraprofessionals. Their student teaching, they continue to do that through the course of their regular employment. A traditional student teacher that's not employed with the school district is assigned with a mentor teacher, and they're in her classroom or his classroom. And I think that the reason why this addition was put into the bill is really to address how incentivizing pathways for teaching has worked and how those funds were meant to go, and some confusion about whether they could really earn money while they were in the first 4 weeks of the student teaching. I believe it's just to clarify that part of it.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Senator Titus, NRS 286.297 says PERS is not included for a student teacher. And Senator Hammond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I was listening to the discussion. I don't really have a particular question. I just, my experience as a teacher and then as a student teacher, in kind of what we're looking at now, and that is trying to incentivize. And this is why I think you guys are trying to clarify and make this program better than it was, and making sure that we try to create that pathway. And that's what it's all about. It's creating a pathway. And so you've got a lot of folks who are out there, and I think Senator Buck mentioned this earlier, that there are a lot of people who probably are going to be good teachers, but they happen to be in the classroom now, maybe as an aide. And so in order to incentivize them and be able to leave that aide position in which they're making money, you have to, give them some way to earn something while they're doing the student teaching. And if they're, if they're substitute teaching, that's one way of doing it, making sure they're earning money. I have no problem with that. I think it's a great idea. I mean, I was left on my own. I had two different master teachers that I was left with, and one of them just kind of left me out there and said, "Hey, have fun with the kids," and didn't learn anything. And I just looked around thinking, what am I doing day in and day out? And then I had another one that was really good at mentoring me for the first couple of weeks, and then starting to let me teach a little bit here and there. I thought it was great. But what you guys are doing is trying to hone in on creating a perfect path, or a more perfect pathway, to making sure that these folks are brought in and taught the right way, and they feel like they have some support with them as well as they get into the profession. I think it's great. It's a great idea, and I like the fact that you're contemplating that payment for them as well. So I'm okay with that.
Thank you, Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Lang. I sure do appreciate this bill. In fact, a lot of times it's a hardship when people going through university then have to take time off from their regular job to be able to student teach. So definitely always trying to find ways to get substitute teachers paid. So would the teacher actually, or the person actually have to have a long-term substitute license or substitute license before they student taught, or would that be at the same time, or would they, I guess they'd need it before they would actually be student teaching, right? Is that correct?
Kenny Varner for the record, and thank you, Senator Buck, and I can address both your question and Senator Hammond's comment a little bit. Well, there's a lot of scenarios by which somebody can come to student teaching. There's a little bit of an irony. You can be a long-term substitute and not be in a teacher ed program at all and earn money as a long-term substitute, whereas our students who've had 4 years of preparation have an embargo on their first 4 weeks of student teaching, even though they come to that experience often well prepared and better prepared. So that's one of the challenges with this. And to earn substitute pay, you would have to have a substitute license, would be my understanding, and so that they would still have to go through all the proper background checks, apply with NDE, and this is to address sort of some of the gaps that NDE experiences, where some of the overlap in licensure doesn't work well as it pertains to the student teachers.
And so just to follow up, if I may, when it comes to background checks, so you make sure that they have the background checks or not, does that complicate it or not? I mean, I know that's a necessary step, but.
Kenny Varner for the record. Thank you, Senator Buck. I think the background checks are a complicated matter all the way around. It's really important, but we know that there's significant time delay on those, and it's become one of the obstacles, one of the boulders on the highway. We'd like to leave Boulder Highway to Southern Nevada and not a resistance to teachers getting to the classroom. And so I think that that's something that generally the background checks need to be something that we know is a problem for folks, and we're trying to encourage them to get this with their license earlier, because we know that it can take several months sometimes to go through that process. We also don't want folks in classrooms who haven't been background checked likely.
And what I found too is sometimes you have to get a background check for the university and then the district. Is there a way to streamline that so it's just one background check, so the right arm checks the left arm, so that we can process these faster?
Kenny Varner for the record, and I think that, in the next bill we're going to hear as well, we're trying to work really hard to streamline across the board with everything. One of the challenges in this state is that there's a lot of great thoughts around teacher preparation. They end up creating lots of lanes that intersect over each other and make things complicated. So UNLV, and I know I can't speak for the other institutions, but I know that we're committed to working across the state from the legislature and the districts to understand the best ways to streamline, to have effective folks in front of children and not lose them along the way. The loss of income is certainly a great barrier for many of our students. They can't afford to student teach, and so they've tended to drop out at the very end of a program, and they've made a pretty significant investment in their education, and they're not able to complete it. That's not only heartbreaking, but it's counterproductive to filling teacher shortage.
And one last question. I know that being a long-term sub definitely prepares you for student teaching and for actually doing the job. What I found in my experience and experience in running a semi-small district was that a lot of times our ARL folks aren't necessarily as prepared. Is there a way to kind of wrap yourselves around this for extra training for that lane?
Kenny Varner for the record. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I think when we get to SB 438, you're going to hear about a lot of those efforts that we're trying to do, but that's certainly a part of this. So NITEP in a lot of ways is an extracurricular program. In 438, we're going to hear about the curricular part of the program, and I think we're just generally all working as hard as we can across the state to streamline processes while enhancing the quality of the preparation for folks serving children and making sure that students aren't without qualified people teaching them.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, if you'd like to step back, we'll open it for public comment. Those wishing in Las Vegas and Carson City to speak in favor of this bill, please come to the table.
Madam Chair, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, in support of SB 291. We did speak in support in those last days of the 2017 session in favor of SB 548, creating NITEP. We support this bill in particular. We'd associate ourselves with the comments of Senators Hammond and Buck, I believe, on the issue of that 4-week obstacle or barrier to student teachers. They're going to be better prepared than many long-term subs out there, and it's the right thing to do. I would note that on the Assembly side, we did support AB 323, which contemplates payment for student teachers. Perhaps that can be harmonized. We appreciate the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person.
Good afternoon, Chair Lang and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, representing the Vegas Chamber. We are in support of SB 291. Education is one of the Vegas Chamber's top priorities, and we appreciate this bill aims to address the shortage of teachers and substitute teachers by eliminating that 4-week requirement, and also supports our rising educators. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anthony Ruiz, Nevada State College. We support this bill. Really appreciate the partnership from our friends from UNLV and look forward to incorporating the multi-school approach into this program to make it even better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Constance Brooks representing the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. We are overwhelmingly in support of SB 291. We thank Senator Cannizzaro and leadership in her office, former Senator Joyce Woodhouse, who was a champion for education and in particular for teacher preparation. We thank them for their support and for the collaborative efforts with the College of Education at UNLV. We also would like to thank the nonprofit community that have stepped up to join the work. And in particular, we'd like to call out the Public Education Foundation for their support. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Alejandro Rodriguez, Nevada System of Higher Education, and she's in strong support of SB 291. I'd just like to echo the remarks from our institutions. Thank you so much.
There's that special word again. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Morgan Baicelli. I'm with Silver State Government Relations. I'm here on behalf of a small coalition of Washoe charters. We'd like to thank the Majority Leader for bringing this bill forward. We are in support of this bill and bringing additional teachers into the classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marco Rauda with El Faro Consulting, and I think everything's been said, so I'm just going to say ditto.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, Dr. Lindsay Diamond, Department Chair and Associate Professor of Educator Preparation in the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Nevada, Reno. I would like to express our continued support of SB 291. We've seen positive impacts of this program from our cohort of students. As a note, our student teachers, in reference to the question earlier, are observed 6 times, and there's ongoing collaboration and observations by the lead teacher. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Joseph Morgan, Associate Professor of Special Education and Chair of Early Childhood Multilingual and Special Education at UNLV. For the record, I'm here today in support of SB 291, which would continue funding for the Nevada Institute on Teaching and Educator Preparation. As a faculty member in the College of Education, I've witnessed firsthand the power in providing opportunities to meaningfully engage in the community and in research for our undergraduate students so that they might develop their skills to answer important questions about the problems facing students within their community and partner with researchers on developing problem-solving and solutions-oriented approaches to those variables. It also helps us as faculty understand the perspectives of these critical stakeholders as they enter the classroom so we can embed their ideas into our coursework and our research. All in all, it helps us work together as an entire state to better support the needs of K-12 students, and I'm in strong support of SB 291. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przinski, here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents, an organization that's comprised of all 17 superintendents in our state. And I can't say it any better than Senator Hammond did. I love the description of student teaching and all of the aspects that go along with that. We're in strong support of this bill, which will help us with the teacher pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Las Vegas, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dr. Claire Treadwell. I am a UNLV faculty member and director of the UNLV CSUM preschool and a former teacher for Clark County School District for 18 years. NITEP provides our students with embedded experiences to work with our young children and their families. Students provide the best practice strategies to engage with these young children that both provide our families with resources to help foster their child's development and provide students with in-practice experience that is interfacing with families and developing age-appropriate and culturally responsive practices to implement when working with children. We are grateful to bring a very important partnership like the NITEP Family Learning Nights into our 5-star NACE-accredited, fully inclusive preschool to provide over 200 children and families these activities. Funding provided to the efforts like NITEP is critical to being able to continue multifaceted partnerships like these that impact our future educators, families, and our very youngest children. UNLV is committed to fostering these partnerships through faculty, staff, and community and student involvement. And I thank the legislature for prioritizing these experiences for all through NITEP and other bills like SB 291. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. My name is Cristina Romero, and I am a UNLV student and participant of NITEP. Today, I am here to voice my support for the bill of SB 291 in support for NITEP. Being a participant of NITEP gives you the opportunities of participating in professional development workshops where we learn from current educational topics from equitable education all the way to emerging topics of AI technologies. We also are able to participate in research projects, collaborate with students at UNLV, UNR, and NSC, creating relationships across the state's higher education institutions and communities. In conclusion, keeping the appropriation is an investment towards our educators, keeping the doors open of opportunity, empowerment, and community partnerships. Thank you, and I vote you to urge your vote to support SB 291.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Miranda Garcia, and I am a third-year student at UNLV and a third-year fellow of the NITEP education program. In NITEP, we evaluate, develop, and conduct approaches to teaching that address a variety of educational settings. We get connections in our community through our research projects and opportunities to work for nonprofits like Spread the Word Nevada. We also get professional development days, which give us perspectives and resources that we learn from other teachers and educators. This program helps prepare us to be not only great teachers and make an impact in the future, but it also helps us make an impact in our community now. So I urge you to vote in favor of SB 291.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Dr. Heather Dol-Jacinto, Assistant Professor at the UNLV College of Education in the Department of Counselor Education, School Psychology, and Human Services. I'm here today in support of SB 291. Specifically, I currently am a co-I on NITEP, and I facilitate the Mental Health and Wellness Educational Engagement Pathway, along with my colleague, Dr. Wendy Hoskins. The Mental Health and Wellness Educational Engagement Pathway supports NITEP fellows to develop increased knowledge and impact mental health has on themselves, their students, and their students' families. NITEP fellows learn and reflect on their personal mental health, wellness strategies, and potential barriers to a successful transition to become an effective licensed educator. We know that supporting the mental health and wellness of our students and their families is vital. In Nevada, suicide is the leading cause of death for ages 12 to 19, and from 2009 to 2019, persistent sadness or hopelessness increased by 40% to affect 1 in 3 high school students. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, 1 in 5 young people report that the pandemic has had a significant impact on their mental health. Nevada continues to be ranked lowest in the nation, one of the lowest in the nation for access to care and mental health treatment, and many children and their families may not have access or know how to access mental health outside of the school. Our teachers may be the bridge for that child to receive additional mental health support. Being on the front line as an educator, teachers are often the first person to recognize a student is struggling. Teachers need to be able to identify potential risk factors and learn the support systems, such as school counselors, that are available to help students. Our mental health and wellness educator engagement pathway seeks to bridge the gap between the fellows' personal and professional mental health journey, increasing their overall mental health competency awareness in the school setting. As they transition from student to educator, their new roles and responsibilities include awareness of potential risk factors, barriers, and stressors affecting themselves and the school community they serve. Thank you for your time today, your support, and our future licensed educators. I urge you to vote yes on SB 291. Additionally, we had a colleague, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead.
We had a colleague that had to step out, Dr. Wendy Hoskins, to teach her class, and I was wondering if I was able to read her statement as well.
Can you go after Francesca?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'm going to echo what others have said. CCEA is in strong support of programs that remove barriers. We really appreciate the work of NITEP and anything we can do to, remove barriers and access to the profession. We really appreciate the majority leader's work in supporting educators, in regard to SB 291 and other legislation too. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and go ahead.
Hello again, Heather Dol-Jacinto. I'm going to read Dr. Wendy Hoskins' statement. She's an associate professor at the UNLV College of Education in the Department of Counselor Education, School Psychology, and Human Services. And again, she facilitates the mental health and wellness educational pathway, engagement pathway along with me. This pathway supports NITEP students to develop increased knowledge of the impact mental health has on themselves, their students, and their students' families. NITEP fellows learn and reflect on their personal mental health, wellness strategies, and potential barriers to a successful transition to become an effective licensed educator. During this pathway, fellows engage in modules that focus on various mental health topics and how they relate to their professional development, including personal wellness and burnout prevention for educators, student mental health crisis, student mental health balancing home and school, and connecting with your school counselor, school psychologist, school social worker, and other helping professionals. Fellows engaged in knowledge building and reflection regarding how their own mental health can affect their personal and professional wellness, along with how they handle career stress. By learning various strategies and building a toolbox of resources, fellows can better handle their own journey of mental health and wellness and be there for their students. Here are a few takeaways from fellows who have participated. Teachers providing mental health support includes being comfortable with yourself before helping others. School mental health services need more attention and funding. And finally, teachers providing mental health support is essential not only to the student, but themselves too. As a former K-12 teacher, Dr. Hoskins can attest to how much she wishes she had this training. Your support of NITEP and our future licensed educators is meaningful. We vote you to, she urges you to vote yes on SB 291. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Morgan Jackson. I am here in support of SB 291. A critical aspect of this program is the professional development offered to our NITEP fellows 4 times a year. Our professional development is a combination of book studies, keynote speakers, and breakout sessions with local educators. It is an opportunity for these pre-service teachers to hear from renowned speakers and leaders in education at a time when they are developing their pedagogical beliefs before they enter the classroom, helping to develop the type of teacher they will become and being proactive in teacher training, developing them and engaging them prior to becoming a licensed teacher. As a licensed teacher myself, access to this type of professional development prior to entering the classroom would have better prepared me for situations and scenarios I encountered and would have allowed me to come into the classroom with a clearer pedagogical belief and as a more effective teacher for my students. So much of what I learned as a classroom teacher, these fellows are being taught before even stepping into the classroom, which not only helps them as teachers, but benefits their future students as well. As a graduate from a CCSD high school and 2 NSHE institutions and a licensed teacher, I thank you for your time and I strongly urge you to join me in supporting our pre-service teachers and our students through your support of SB 291. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi there. Hi, Kelsey Claus for the record, and I'm going to read some remarks on behalf of a NITEP fellow who couldn't be here today because he is completing some classwork. My participation in the NITEP Institute, or the Nevada Institute on Teaching and Educator Preparation, has connected me to professionals and scholars from across the nation, provided opportunities to practice delivering lessons while applying various instructional strategies, and engaged me with the diverse needs of our community through volunteer experiences. Not only has the NITEP program shaped my professional life, but it has also helped me achieve my personal and financial goals, which have allowed me to focus on my studies. The professional development has allowed me to attend a variety of workshops focused on topics such as tribal sovereignty, building transformative multicultural classrooms, integrating social skill learning in the classroom, and examining the impact of critical perspectives in K-12 education. These workshops have provided me with invaluable insights and strategies to help enhance my teaching and leadership practices, as well as deepen my understanding of diverse perspectives and experiences. I've had diverse educational experiences, such as providing English language support to multicultural students at Colegio Concepcion in San Pedro, Chile, and offering small group tutoring to middle schoolers through MGM Partnership in Las Vegas. These experiences have allowed me to implement the pedagogical knowledge acquired in professional development while gaining experience organizing a class and teaching content area literacy. I've also engaged in meaningful community service learning opportunities, including designing and presenting family workshops and volunteering with the Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. These activities have allowed me to develop my leadership skills and foster relationships with families and students in the Las Vegas community. That was from our fellow Samuel Self, who, like the fellows you've heard from today, is wonderful, and I think really encapsulates the experience that you have as a NITEP fellow. So I'm here in support of SB 291, and thank you all for hearing us today.
Thank you so much. Okay, BPS, can we go to the phones, please?
Testify in support of SB 291. Press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Again, to testify in support of SB 291, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Dr. Shelley Cruz Crawford. For the record, I am in strong support of this bill. Last legislative session, I helped with SB 352, which allows student paraprofessionals to student teach. This is a result of my research in 2021, where I surveyed future teachers and asked about barriers. There were 1,128 future teachers that said they would become teachers if they were able to have paid student teaching. So we had 1,128 future teachers. Any way we can remove barriers to licensure, I am in full support, and I have been able to see the NITEP program, and it benefited to hire some of those teachers as a principal, and it is a high-quality, effective program. So I'm in full support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please.
Hello, this is Susan Proffitt, Proffitt, and I'm the Vice President of the Nevada Republican Club. And I think I can speak for all of us when we say this is a very important topic that we need to address in this state. I approve of this bill with one caveat, please. One of the other departments had suggested that we put some restraints on it that would ensure that the money was used for the right purposes. And the reason I am suggesting that we do that is because the education department has taken money and moved it from the teachers' medical fund and given it to the teachers' union and bailed them out. And I think it was millions, 47 was quoted. But more to the point, I think it would be great if you could add one thing, and that is to say that if the money is not used for the purpose that it was intended when we voted it in, that it has to be returned. So that way, no organization and no department within the government can misappropriate or move it to another area that it was not intended for. So thank you for bringing this to the floor. It's very much needed, and we aren't going to be able to fix our medical issues or any other issues and bring jobs to the state unless we fix our education department first. So I thank you, and I thank Governor Lombardo for being the education governor, and I hope you will push through his agenda as well. We need it desperately. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And for those people in Las Vegas, we've lost video feed with you, and you are moving to a different room, room 4406. And so we'll get you back in just a minute. We'll continue with calls on the phone.
Paula, you're unmuted.
Hi, my name is Andrea Cole, and I just tuned in about an hour ago. I am a parent and a teacher, and I'm calling in support of SB 291. We all know that we are in desperate need of teachers, and I think removing that barrier to getting kids that are going through the whole teaching program at the university, and then, like the presenter said, they're then sometimes stopping at the end because they can't afford to student teach. And so I think removing that barrier, and it's my understanding that they wouldn't, there sounded like there was some confusion, that they wouldn't be a substitute teacher. They're being paid the same wage as a substitute teacher. Because what we don't want is only kids that can afford to take a year off work to teach. Because we know that we have a lot of kids in low socioeconomic situations, and if they're only getting teachers that are coming from the background of being able to just take a year off work, I don't think that that's everybody, right? And I think we want people that really want to be here, and not everybody can just take a year off work like that. So just like a lot of you had paid internships for your jobs, I think that student teachers, that needs to be a paid internship to remove that barrier so that they can come and work with the kids. And while they're student teaching, their focus should be on learning to be an excellent teacher, not, oh gosh, I got to get through this day because I'm moonlighting as a whatever at night to pay my bills. They should be able to completely focus on becoming the best teacher they can be and learning everything they can and have that be their focus during that time. So I support SB 291, and I hope that you guys make the right choice there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next caller, please.
If you have just joined us and would like to testify in support of SB 291, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers willing to testify in support at this time.
Sure. Will you see if there's anyone that wants to testify against? And those people in Las Vegas and Carson City who want to testify against can go ahead and fill the chairs at the front. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to neutral. Anybody wanting to speak in neutral in Carson City or in Las Vegas or on the phones? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Canizaro, would you like to come and do a couple closing comments? Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Nicole Canizaro, Senate District 6. I just want to thank you very much for your time and attention to this bill. I think it's an important step that we can continue to utilize so that we can continue to develop great educators here in the state. I am a product of the education system here in Nevada. Vegas Verdes Elementary, J.M. Ullum Elementary, Woodbury Middle School, Chaparral High School, Wolfpack UNR grad, and a UNLV law school grad. So I believe very much in the education that we can afford students in this state and the opportunities it can provide. And we need to be doing everything we can to support educators who can help all of our students excel and have the opportunities that they deserve. So thank you for your time and attention today.
Thank you for being here. And with that, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 291, and we'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 438. And I'm going to go down and present, and Senator Neal is going to chair the meeting while I'm presenting, and then I'll come back up when I'm finished. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Neal, members of the committee. I'm Roberta Lang, representing Senate District 7 in Clark County. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 438, a bill that ultimately seeks to address the teacher shortage crisis in Nevada by better coordinating a statewide effort aimed at addressing the recruitment preparation of those who plan to become teachers and the retention of those who currently serve the state in that capacity. Teachers and other educational personnel are critical components of Nevada's educational system. For several years, we have seen many Nevada entities, including this legislature, look at various ways to assist schools in the recruitment and retention of teachers. The state has funded and implemented numerous programs to support initiatives such as strengthening teacher preparation programs, streamlining the licensure process, removing barriers to recruitment, and improving job satisfaction and working environments. However, Nevada continues to face a chronic teacher shortage both in its urban and rural school districts. It is time we shift our approach. This bill will better coordinate, consolidate, and improve the efficiency of a statewide efforts in recruiting and retaining teachers. And before I hand it over to the next presenter, I just want to thank, I think this is the first time we've had 3 presidents of 3 universities to speak on a bill all at the same time. So I thank them for being here. And it just points to the importance of this issue and why we need to do something. We have the people that are leading our universities that are saying this is what we need to do. And so I think that that's really important. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kirsten Sear from the Public Education Foundation. Yeah, you do. Do you have that? Go ahead.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Kirsten Sear. I'm the president of the Public Education Foundation, and we are proudly here today to present an entirely new approach in Nevada to teacher recruitment and indeed retention in the first 3 years. I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Kenny Varner, who is Associate Dean at UNLV.
Dr. Kenny Varner for the record. I'll walk quickly through the bill. First, SB 438 creates the Teach Nevada Collaborative in Nevada's Department of Education as further outlined in Section 9. The purpose of the collaborative is to consolidate, coordinate, and improve the efficiency of all statewide efforts to recruit and prepare those who want to become teachers in Nevada's public schools, retain teachers who currently work in Nevada's public schools. Additionally, the collaborative must work with the Nevada system of higher education and other stakeholders to support dual credit programs for pupils who wish to become teachers, provide scholarships to certain students in programs that lead to a teaching license, provide support to certain students and student teachers, and support programs to recruit people into the teaching profession. Additionally, the bill creates the Teach Nevada Collaborative account in the State General Fund. The allowable use of money is outlined in Section 8 and includes the use for the recruitment and preparation of future teachers and the retention of existing teachers, awarding scholarships to those obtaining the necessary education to become licensed or endorsed as a teacher, and 3, awarding grants to various entities that recruit and prepare those to become teachers and retain existing public school teachers. Section 16 repeals the Teach Nevada Scholarship Program, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. It's not actually repealing it at all. That would be terrible. Real quick, I want to... Governor Sandoval's here, and he created it, and that's... We're often asked why we do this work, and I just want to start with a slightly personal anecdote. My mother, who's on the screen here, passed away in early February unexpectedly. I, like many of the students we serve at UNLV, and even some in this room, I'm a first-generation college attendee, and we tend to put a lot of focus and emphasis on first-generation college attendees as the magic part, but it's our parents who didn't have that opportunity to go through college and university and realize their dream that make a difference. The programs that we're talking about and consolidate these efforts actually help many folks who are not traditional pathway teachers, but those who want to come back later in life to become teachers, and for many of them, break first-generation cycles. As an immigrant, my mother also didn't have some of the opportunities that she made sure that I had, and through these pathway programs, part of our commitment isn't about robotically preparing teachers. It's trying to recognize that every child deserves to have the absolute best education, and that we ensure that those teaching keep the personal stories of the students that they teach and their own lived experiences is part of why we do this work. I'll turn it back over to Kristen Sear. Or Kirsten, I'm so sorry. Long day, this is long.
It's been a very long day. Kirsten Sear, Public Education Foundation for the record. So you might be wondering why the Public Education Foundation is sitting here with the representatives of NSHE to talk about what is essentially a higher education bill. And the reason is because PEF's Board of Directors are very concerned about the ongoing and frankly worsening teacher shortage crisis that disproportionately affects our students in underserved communities. And we have been partnering with UNLV on this issue, and we are very impressed that higher education and nonprofit organizations in Nevada and around the country are recognizing that this is an equity issue and it's a workforce development concern, and they're stepping up on this issue in a meaningful and innovative way. Today, a historic coalition of NSHE institutions and nonprofit groups such as PEF are proposing this new Teach Nevada collective. The collaborative. The collaborative will provide NSHE institutions with the funding and flexibility to create, implement, and track pipelines of students from the high school level through our teachers' first 3 years in the classroom. It will also provide K-12 entities with a much larger pool of local, more diverse, homegrown teachers. And this slide tells you exactly why we need to address the lack of local pipelines in Nevada. In total, our school districts average hiring in total throughout the state 2,755 teachers a year. Our 4 NSHE institutions that produce teachers produce on average 785 teachers a year. The math on this does not even begin to add up, and you can see why our school districts are put in a position where they're constantly working to recruit teachers from out of state, teachers who may or may not be committed to living in Nevada and staying and working with our students. With this collective, we are addressing 3 issues that are critical. One is inflexibilities in our current teacher preparation programs. 2 is an overfocus on scholarship programs without providing wraparound supports that we know will significantly increase graduation rates. And 3 is reducing barriers and increasing accountability so that you know how many teachers are in the pipeline at any time. Nevada's teacher shortage is growing worse, and it impacts our most underserved students the most. Why is this such a pressing issue that we believe now is the time to bring a solution? Data consistently tells us that learning loss due to not having a licensed teacher can impact a student financially for the rest of their lives. Data also tells us that Nevada schools need an additional 1,200 teachers right now, impacting more than 30,000 students. The learning loss from just one missed year of instruction can have a $61,000 impact on a student's lifelong earning potential, according to a study from McKinsey. On a side note, we at PEF have a high school intern. She actually does not go to a CCSD school, but she's an extremely hard worker who wants to study psychology. And around the holidays, I asked her how her school year was going, and she told me that she didn't have a permanent math teacher. And I asked her what this meant for her, and she said, "I guess I just won't learn geometry this year." And it really broke my heart because this is a student who is doing everything she can to advance, and she has absolutely no control over that situation. She has since received a full-time substitute teacher, but with someone who has dreams of going to college, the consequences of that lost semester of learning could impact her for years. Additionally, national research tells us that it costs school districts about $20,000 to hire and onboard each new teacher. We are here today because Nevada's 400,000 plus students are relying on us to fix this issue. These are devastating numbers, but even worse when heat maps show us that students who most need a caring, consistent licensed teacher are the ones who don't have access to them. These are heat maps provided by CCSD. And they show us on the left, we see areas with the highest concentration of teacher vacancies, and on the right, we see areas with the highest concentration of Black and Latinx students. These are really startling maps. Recent figures from CCSD show us that 109 schools have at least a 10% teacher vacancy, 30 schools have at least a 20% teacher vacancy, and 6 schools have at least a 30% teacher vacancy rate in January of 2023. The one piece of good news that I have for you about this slide is that I mentioned that we are working closely with UNLV to recruit future teachers. We are mentoring school paraprofessionals who want to become teachers and want to go into the UNLV Paraprofessional Pathway Program. The red dots that you see on these slides are the areas where our current mentees work, and we have found that they often live near the areas where they work as well. And so you can see that when we focus on this innovative program to help paraprofessionals become teachers, we are not only lifting people out of poverty, but we are creating teachers who are dedicated to working in the areas where we most need teachers, where students most need them. So we've talked a little bit about what's working or what's not working and why we think that this is the solution. While we have found that there are shining lights of organizations that are working to innovatively nurture teachers, we have found that many of our institutions are operating in silos and that there's little data statewide about the effectiveness of current grant programs to help nurture new teachers. That is why we seek to create one statewide collective to combine current statewide funds and efforts. Instead of having multiple streams of funding with different requirements and different deadlines, we suggest that all NC institutions and nonprofit organizations recruiting teachers can apply for block grants to address this issue. We welcome accountability and have built-in mechanisms throughout this plan, not only to create new pathways of teaching candidates, but also to evaluate the effectiveness of public and private funds utilized in producing these teachers. We need desperately a public-private partnership, all hands on deck strategy statewide. States around the nation are doing this. In Illinois, the governor just announced $70 million a year for 3 years for innovative teacher preparation programs and scholarships. In Michigan, the governor just announced a $100 million investment. States like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin are also announcing tens of millions of dollars for teacher preparation programs and scholarship funds. There's a narrative that people don't want to become teachers these days, but nationally, these innovative programs have found that there are people interested in becoming teachers. They just need extra support. And here to talk to you today about one model providing extra support that has been extremely successful is Dr. Kenny Varner.
Kenny Varner for the record. Our research has shown that there's 3 major areas of leaks in the pipeline, from those that might want to become teachers to those that stay 3+ years in the profession. We can generally organize those as leak 1 revolving around pre, during, and after program wraparound supports not existing. The second, cost of attendance and logistical barriers. And the third, program inflexibility. We talked earlier in the previous bill that if I'm working full-time and the coursework's only offered during the day, it makes it really difficult for me to continue that sort of thing. At UNLV, through the leadership of President Whitfield and Dean Hayes, we've been able to implement a program called the Paraprofessional Pathways Project, and I think the data there has helped us understand how this Teach Nevada collaborative can really materialize into something quite special in Nevada. In our traditional programs, we have a 44% graduation rate, though we have 65% students of color. What's alarming there is 6 out of every 10 students aren't finishing within a reasonable graduation rate, and it's negatively impacting folks of color. In the Paraprofessional Pathways Project, 70% of our students are students of color with a 92% graduation rate. What's the difference for us? We've figured out that through, by addressing the totality and constellation of wraparound services, pre, during, and after program supports, as well as the elimination of barriers, we're able to have more success. So actively recruiting the untapped market of paraprofessionals who have not been encouraged to become teachers because of logistical restrictions around how they can earn income and how they can complete their program, as well as program inflexibility. Actively providing onboarding and transitioning at the higher ed level to make sure that those coming who've spent 15, 20 years in a profession and coming back to a university setting have the proper supports to be successful. Providing the full financial support, and in the PPP program, these students have no out-of-pocket costs, so we're not asking them to take loan debt with the hope that they might become teachers. We're actually actively making sure that that's not a barrier. Providing flexible and predominantly asynchronous online coursework with Saturday and weekend flexibility in terms of in-person interaction. Meaningful embedded professional development, as well as 3-year post-program support. With those clamps in mind, we envision the Teach Nevada Collaborative as an opportunity to reduce the bureaucracy of the current grant programs. There are a number of pathway programs that exist in the state. They all operate separately, and in the point of delivery to students, they're ineffective. We can talk about why. Data-driven and built-in accountability measures, we fully understand that in the current system, given the totality of pathways and the inability to collect profoundly strong data, we're not able to be as accountable as we want to be. And part of the commitment here is across institution accountability, along with accountability for NDE, in terms of student impact on student performance, as well as building on best practices that increase graduation rates. To walk through the 4 areas, we're not eliminating Teach Nevada, as I said earlier, but instead of having a standalone program called Teach Nevada and a standalone program called IPT and a standalone program called NV Epic, and standalone programs around dual concurrent enrollment, we're proposing to be able to comprehensively address them in a single bill that would allow institutions of higher ed, as well as other providers, ARL providers who are not higher ed institutions, to be able to apply for block grants to deal with 4 things. High school pipeline, which would be dual and concurrent enrollment. Traditional with wraparound support, and most importantly includes 2-year institutions. None of the current funding models in the state involve 2-year institutions, which is a real challenge given the number of folks that go through 2-year institutions on their pathway to becoming a teacher. Enhancing fast-track opportunities for paraprofessionals and other alternative route to licensures. And as we discussed in SB 291, creating more residency models that allow student teaching to be year-long that can incorporate paid internship models as well. In the 3rd column, we identify where state programming and funds currently exist that do these things, though most of those funds are direct scholarship supports only and don't build in what we see as important programming and wraparound supports that are necessary to make these work. And we've also provided some indication of how many students could be serviced in this as well. And how we've addressed those 6 pipelines with these 4 areas. And you have this presentation, I'm not going to walk through all of it, but just to say that we are actively thinking about recruitment, pre-program support, addressing cost of attendance, program structures, in-program support, and post-program support across all 4 of those areas. So this is a first-of-its-kind comprehensive program that all NSHE institutions will collaborate on with together and be able to really address more comprehensively. I'm going to turn over now to Dean Hayes.
Thank you, Danica Hayes for the record, and I too want to thank our NCHE presidents for spending the day with us. It's really significant as well. And the rumor is true that the NCHE institutions can get along. We can be at the same table. In fact, I'm wearing blue and black, so I can stray from red. But this is a very important bill that has been working, and it's been working because we've had this partnership. So for the past couple of years, we have shown success. We've shown higher graduation rates in terms of 50%, 50 points higher. We've shown teacher candidate graduates 70% and higher at teachers of color. And we've shown, as Kristen mentioned, that they are teaching in the areas of the most need. And we believe with this continuation of funding, we are able to provide all the supports that are needed and increase the capacity of the net growth of teachers 500 per year to help by the end of the biennium close that gap. And in the meantime, we are making chunks of progress, as Kenny and Kirsten shared with you some of the impacts that we've had. We'll be able to, let's share this. Okay. So I think it's very natural for people to freak out when they see a $51 million price tag on a proposed bill. And so I want to highlight a couple of things. One is something that PEF has been instrumental in. They've done some surveying in the district and have found that over 2,200 paraprofessionals and support staff want to be teachers. There's interest. They are essentially impoverished. We know what these folks make, and we have to break the cycle of poverty, not just for them, but for kids in their classroom and for their families. That's the first piece. This is an investment in workforce development. And if we look at the cost of this, every time we lose a teacher on average in the state, it's around $20,000. If you multiply $20,000 times the number of vacancies per year, that number is way higher than $51 million. And so we look at what we've currently spent in terms of funding from last legislature on Teach Nevada and IPT, in addition to some of the emergency funding. We can do more with that money and provide all the wraparound supports that support people that want to be teachers from high school all the way until they're in their third year as an educator. And we are committed to that as this Teach Nevada collaborative. So we'll be able to develop this pipeline through dual concurrent enrollment, increasing interest in graduating high schoolers with up to 30 credits. In NCHE institutions, we will utilize funding to target some of the leaks that Kenny mentioned and increase graduation rates. It allows us to be innovative and establish one-year programs such as paraprofessional programs and alternative route to licensure programs, and it provides those necessary wraparound services. And I want to reiterate what my colleagues have said. No one wants more accountability on funding than we do. We have, as NCHE institutions and private partnerships, we want to be held accountable to the funding that is provided by the state. We want to be held accountable with being able to show how programs like this impact not only the proportion of high-quality teachers, diverse teachers, but how it impacts at the student level in the classroom. And so part of this infrastructure is to set up that accountability model. And on this slide, you will see certain metrics that we are proposing, and these metrics would be reported twice a year and provided on a public-facing website so that any public person in Nevada, any legislator, anyone can go and see how we're performing and how we're using that money. And so this collaborative is key to that. Yep. Thank you.
Just so everyone knows, I've just been informed that we're going to lose our video feed in Las Vegas in 10 minutes. So, however, we need to, yes, that would be great.
I want to introduce, we're very lucky to have two of our NCHE presidents, and I guess we'll start with President Whitfield from UNLV.
Thank you very much. For the record, Keith Whitfield, President of UNLV, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I almost want to say ditto, but I do want to make note that, yes, I have a red tie on, but actually I have a blue blazer on as well. I just want to hit just a couple of points that were mentioned. One is that there's incredible power in the collaboration across NCHE institutions, and particularly in this case between UNR, NSC and UNLV. As you've heard, this is a program that actually we know works. We invested in it back in 2021 at UNLV, and it's just amazing to see a 92% success rate in terms of graduation. Those are the kinds of numbers that you can bank on. That what makes $51 million not seem, well, it's money worth spending. So I just want to say I am representing my university and saying that we're in very, very strong support of this particular bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Whitfield, and thank you also for your patience. And thank you, President Pollard, for representing Nevada State. Are we saying university yet? No, Nevada State University.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, and to members of the Senate Committee on Education. For the record, I am Dr. Darian Pollard, President of Nevada State College/University. I'm delighted to be here and offer full support on behalf of my institution for SB 438. We know that at our School of Education at Nevada State, we've been very fortunate in our commitment to the recruitment and retention of teachers. Last year, our School of Education graduated 144 students along with 40 ARL educators. Every action that is currently being proposed in this legislation is designed to meet the teacher shortage by utilizing creative and innovative programming, as well as fortifying school districts, NCHE, community partnerships, and other key stakeholders, and being part of a continuum to solve a collective problem. This particular legislation, I believe, is particularly important because it addresses 4 key areas to support and bolster graduation rates, while also speaking to the needs of non-traditional, predominantly first-generation student populations. At Nevada State, we specialize in this population, and what we know for sure is that their needs are very distinct and different. First, our teacher education students reflect perseverance and endurance. And if you were to sit through one of our awards pinning ceremonies, you would recognize very clearly that they are passionate about their commitments to teaching, but they have gone through a very serious journey to be there. Quite often, I am moved to tears listening to these stories. And what you will know about this is that oftentimes it is funding, particularly because of parental or family obligations, that has impacted their ability to complete college and to graduate within 4 years. Therefore, they have tried to work diligently to meet that need. As first-generation students, they are often overwhelmed with navigating the adult education system, and they look to us to guide them in these spaces. And as was mentioned earlier, those adults who are returning to the workforce through education oftentimes need a special hand in terms of the work we're doing. Our goal, I believe, is to holistically address all ends of the teacher pipeline, from high school student recruitment and retention to unique 2+2 partnerships with 2-year institutions, and certainly to be focused on non-traditional baccalaureate programs. For example, at Nevada State, our Teacher Academy Pipeline program brings about 600 sophomores and freshmen to our campus annually and continues to grow each and every time we sit with those students. Let me end by offering one observation. We know that COVID-19 has impacted higher education dramatically, and more importantly, the teacher career pipeline has been impacted more than any of us ever reckoned. While the debate in the public space and square leaves much to be desired as we grapple with this reckoning moment, I believe this legislation is an opportunity to bring all NCHE partners to the table and to design more cohesive structures so that we can move Nevada forward and move our system forward. Besides voting rights, this may be one of the most consequential equity issues of our time. Thank you very much, and I urge your support.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Dale Urquiaga, and I serve as the acting chancellor of the Nevada System of Higher Education. I'm going to echo something that, there's that word again, President Searer said in her remarks. This is an all-hands-on-deck moment when it comes to our teacher shortage in this state. And so, as you saw in just the prior bill, and as you see with this bill, there are a number of pieces of legislation moving in this body that try to deal with this all-hands-on-deck moment of our teacher shortage. There are bills in the other house. One was heard yesterday, also dealing with the student-teacher pipeline. The governor has a bill that includes some language around Teach Nevada and the stepping up of that program. And there's another bill coming in the Assembly that deals with sort of the early grades ladder up. So I come to you, I guess, so often the poster child for if you stick around long enough, all roads in your life lead back to where they began. Some of the problems you've heard about, I probably helped cause over my career. And so it is ironic and also satisfying to be here today to support this measure. You've heard from two of my presidents, you will hear from another, but as Dr. Varner mentioned, this bill also includes my other presidents in the two-year institutions. For the first time, we have an opportunity to draw them into this critical conversation about teacher preparation. And so when the folks from UNLV, Dean Hayes and Dr. Varner came to me with President Searer to talk about this program, they had me at hello, as the saying goes, because they had data. I very much appreciate evidence-based policy. They have data about the paraprofessionals program that you heard and how that works. And then they sort of put the icing on that particular cake and talked to me about wraparound services. And if you know my background, I care a great deal about wraparound supports, whether that is for my adult students today or my somewhat younger students in my previous life when I caused some of these problems. I see in this measure not just an opportunity to bring coherence to this scattered world of scholarshiping and teacher shortage and teacher prep, that I think is important. And I do think all the bills that are moving can be reconciled and it could be a coherent package that leaves this body. I also see opportunity for modeling in other spaces. And so now I'll take off my teacher prep hat and put on just my regular old acting chancellor hat. This kind of a model with this sort of wraparound, this sort of data, this scaffolding from the lower grades into higher education could be used in other fields. Nursing comes to mind, probably some others. So I think the folks have done a really nice job, not just of laying out for you a case for why this is necessary, that all hands on deck shortage, but I think they're giving us a model for coherence and that could be replicated in other sectors. And I would also add to what the dean said, it is not every day that INSHE institutions get along. And so as the sort of titular head of that particular family, it's really nice when we're all here together working on a program. So I thank the sponsor for bringing this, and I certainly thank the folks who've advanced this idea.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Brian Sandoval, President of the University of Nevada, Reno. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. And on behalf of the university, we are in full support of this bill. And it is a great pleasure, privilege, and honor to join my friends, President Pollard and President Whitfield from Nevada State and UNLV. This is, I think, a moment that doesn't happen very often, and I think there are going to be a lot more moments like this where we come together, particularly for a piece of legislation that has so much potential to do so much good for the state. As Dr. Varner alluded to, is that this is something that started back in 2017 with the Teach Nevada scholarship. This expands that and I think does incredible things. I'm not going to repeat what the other speakers have said, but it really is a proud moment and a proud opportunity for the state to expand that teacher pipeline and assist all the school districts across the state of Nevada. So with that, thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you so much. Is that the end of your presentations? Are you ready for questions?
We are ready.
Okay, Senator Titus.
Thank you. So I appreciate all the comments, however, I have a number of questions. Who are members of the collaborative and how are they picked? Because it's not defined in this bill anywhere.
Before you answer that, could I just make an announcement to the South? Okay, so in the South, you are going to lose your video feed. People will have the opportunity to either call in or view on the stream online. So I'm just giving you fair warning because you're going to go away, and we are sad about that. But I wanted you to know. Thank you. Go ahead.
Kenny Varner. Thank you, Senator Titus. Minimally, the collaborative is going to be composed of NDE, the ENSH institutions, and there's a question around the alternative providers. So we know that one of the components that we were asked to think about is how the regulatory process could identify what would constitute membership. Initially, this was formed as a partnership with the NSHE institutions, reaching out through NDE. We also know that there's ARL providers that want to be a part of it. One of the things that goes along with this accountability system, though, is that there's an initial conversation about who's in it, but there's also a need to develop some requirements around what it means to continue receiving these funds. And I think that that's something that needs to be developed through the regulatory process, although I don't want to speak for Senator Lang. I think we're happy to address being more clear about that. I think because the initiative was a sort of newer idea, we know that it started with NSHE and NDE, also wanting to create mutual collaborative accountability. NDE certainly distributes a lot of funds currently, and it's unclear as to how the accountability necessarily works with the NSHE partners that receive it. And so I think that there's a partial open question around other members beyond, but certainly teacher preparation providers. The one concern, and I think where there's some hesitation, is I don't think that there's any appetite or interest for predatory providers or folks from outside of Nevada. I didn't say this, but it's really through your question, I want to say that what's unique about this is that we're looking for a Nevada solution to a Nevada problem. So we're not looking to open up a scenario where people start coming in as outside solutions. We really want to look at the Nevada providers, who are the ones that do it, and ensure that they are able to be in this collaborative, that they're producing folks who meet the qualifications for licensure, that they're spending the money appropriately, and that Dean Hayes' discussion of the data metrics and availability is part of the mechanism of regulating the accountability within that and who gets to be in it and how that would work.
Well, thank you for that, but I do have concerns that you're asking for us, and you'll see me again in the Money Committee. You're asking for $51 million, but you're not telling me who's actually going to manage the money, and it just says that you're going to report to LCB, and then LCB is going to report to the Interim Standing Committee on Education on the 30th of June at that time. But you're not telling me who those folks are who are going to manage this money and how the decision process is going to be made. So I have concerns. And then number two is it says that the collaborative shall develop and carry into effect a program that this is section 10. It's going to develop and carry into effect a program of block grants for colleges, universities, and other providers. Is this just going to be that $51 million, and or once you've established the collaborative, some up here kind of management system, are they going to be able to apply and match any federal dollars? You're asking $51 million from the general fund. So I'm just wondering, is this, it's just a plop of money, and I'm worried that there's no ability to use that money for other funds, to match the funds, or anything of that nature. So can you explain that?
Okay. Before you go to the mic, could I ask our legal to respond to your questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. So trying to give a brief answer to both this question and the previous question. The bill as written creates the collaborative account in the general fund and makes the collaborative the agent responsible for administering the account. The collaborative is created in Section 9 of the bill as an agency within the Department of Education. So just like any other component of the Department of Education, that's under the control of the Department of Education and ultimately under the leadership of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. And additionally, in subsection 3 of Section 9, the spending of money from the account is subject to the supervision of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. So this would be one component agency within the Department of Education that has the ability to enter into agreements with the colleges and universities and NSHE and other entities. But ultimately, the Department of Education, since it's a component of the Department of Education, would be responsible for the administration of the money in the account.
And then just along that same line, then would then the Department of Education or the superintendent, Ebert, would she then be the one who decides who's a members of this collaborative?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Committee Counsel. Ultimately, the superintendent exercises control over the Department of Education. So since this is a component entity of the department, it would be the superintendent's decision how to staff it and what the components of the entity would be. So indirectly, at least, the superintendent would have control over which entities the agency enters into agreements with.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have some questions that
answer actually Senator Flores' questions, and then I'll flow into mine. But, so he had a question on Section 6. For the partners, he wanted to know if there's, number one, how would partners know about the program, as they're going to be access for bilingual partners in order to participate in the program? And then I'll start there, and then I'll go from there.
Kenny Varner for the record. Again, as a part of what would be the Nevada Department of Ed, they're going to have the ultimate responsibility around some of that, but the idea is to be inclusive of any partner who can demonstrate an effect in improving instruction for students and thoughtfully preparing those who enter the profession.
Thank you for that. And then the next question is, how will the nonprofits learn about the partnership options so they can participate directly from communities of color?
Danica Hayes for the record. I think your questions are kind of the origins of our concerns that brought forward this bill. We don't seem to have a central way to communicate opportunities, nor do we have a central way of holding folks accountable and being transparent, both around the opportunities to partner in this, but also how the money is being spent. And so part of our goal, and the devil is in the details in terms of how this collaborative does it, is to put forward a biannual reporting of this and a call for partnership. And so that would be a big piece of that.
Thank you for that. So then I have a follow-up to that. So, because you stated part of the issue is access and relationship within communities of color.
Danica Hayes for the
Okay.
record. No, part of the issue is around communicating as a state these opportunities to come together to support education. So what we've had, and many successful efforts, we've had piecemeal initiatives that have supported educator shortages, but they haven't been open to all to participate. And so what our hope with this external facing website and data reporting is more people be aware of what we're trying to do as a state, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't, because because if the current issue is lack of access, then how would they get access just because it's on the website, right? Who is going to be doing the marketing of the program, and who are your feeder relationships into those communities that will be able to build that access? Because, no offense, it's not the Public Education Foundation. That's not who that is.
Thank you, Senator Neal. So first, on the student part of the access, because I think this is an important part. Currently, Teach Nevada, despite its best effort, isn't made available to many students as there could be. There's often been money left. It's up to each institution to sort of decide how they announce it and how they're going to get people qualified for it. And one of the efforts here, and by working NC-wide, is to make sure that we actively aren't just, actively, passively is contradictory, that we're not passively hoping students find out about the scholarships, or even just making the knowledge available to them on a website doesn't mean they're going to take the opportunity. What we're doing is trying to say to the institutions to identify students by the criteria that we are going to have to be able to reach out and say, you qualify for this and we want you to be in these programs. Part of having the wraparound and the professional development and all these other supports isn't just to give scholarship money and say you qualify, here's the money, but it's to identify students that have the need and provide those wraparound supports. At our institution as an HSI and MSI, Nevada State's in a similar situation, Reno as well. A lot of our students are first gen. They haven't had access to some of the infrastructural benefits of higher ed that other folks with those family backgrounds come into. So one part of it, besides the community partner aspect of it, is to make these funds more available to students in a way that is not currently there. Teach Nevada isn't currently accessible. In the Paraprofessional Pathways program, PF is one of many partners that we work with, and they have helped to be able to facilitate pathways for students. We also work with CCEA, the teachers union, for example, which is an interesting thing around post-program support, because the universities, we don't necessarily stay with them once they leave us. One of the implications here is that we have to stay tuned in for at least 3 years, but we have to figure out partnerships with the districts, with the teacher unions, where these teachers are going to go. And then it's working in the professional development. All of the professional development we've done over the last 2 years, we've reached out with national and local experts of color. There hasn't been, every single presenter has been from communities of color. both local and not just in Clark County, but we also partner with folks in Washoe and at a national level to do that. I think that NDE, part of the idea behind the collaborative here is that we all get together to talk about what some of these challenges are in the opportunities and how we build relationships. Institutions haven't necessarily been encouraged to work collaboratively on this. We've each been told to sort of address our little piece of the pie and do it in isolation. Part of how we leverage out the resources and the supports and the community agencies is in conversation, and that hasn't happened.
I appreciate that. So the next question that Senator Flores had was from Section 9, Sub D, Sub 2, Sub D. And he wanted to know in terms of how you, so program is listed here. He wanted to see how, I guess, untraditional programs that are currently probably in place in communities of color, how they would be integrated into this process, right? Because they potentially could exist, but he wanted to know how those programs would be defined so that access for the non-traditional programs that may exist would be allowed, I guess, to at least be deemed a program to participate.
Again, what my understanding would be is that through the organization of this through NDE, they're going to have to create systems of making available what it is that's available, or making known what's available and how to access that as well. And I think that that's a second part of this process is being able to get that there. Can you repeat the second part of your question, though? It was long, sort of long.
The second part was the integration, right? So let's say there is a non-traditional program right now where they're training teachers, right? Maybe it's a community grassroots organization that is currently training teachers now. How would they become eligible? How would they start to fit into the definition? And I guess even more so at this point, because it's a bill and you're saying devil is in the details, how would they then become a collaborator to then make sure that the definition of the program, they fit into the definition, right? And I'm going to caveat this with this. We know that when we do things up here, right, the people that are down here at the grassroots level are not they don't have a seat at the table. I recognize this bill, but these are the questions that he was asking, and so I'm trying to convey what he really wanted to try to get at. But that's what he's worried about. He's saying that there are potentially community organizations, grassroots, that are doing this work, and how do they become integrated into this process by either knowing that a definition will fit them, so they're like, okay, I'm eligible to become a partner, right? I'm eligible to become an established program to do this work, even if it's only 10 students that they can manage. And so that's what he's trying to figure out. What is the pathway for those organizations?
Thank you, Kenny Varner, for the record. And Senator, I don't know that I'm going to answer this all that well, but I will say one of the things that is an important component of this was the reach out to the two-year institutions. The two-year institutions have a lot more connection with grassroots than sometimes the four-year institutions have in some ways. They've been systematically locked out of access from these pipelines, and a lot of the students that are entering the two-year system are ones that come from communities and communities where access hasn't always been the norm. And so I think that part of this is also being able to collaborate across these institutions, not just the four-year institutions, but through the two-year institutions to get closer to the heart of community. And I think that that's an important part of this bill that's never been seen in this state, as far as we can tell, around education, where two-year institutions have access. Those students can't even get to us sometimes because of the roadblocks, and yet those students themselves are often from those community organizations, and finding that the pathway to licensure as an undergrad is only through a four-year degree. There isn't a pathway without a bachelor's degree that is alternative that leads to licensure, and this is one of the complexities. And so I think it's important when we look at sort of the distribution of the funds in this, 95% of this is direct support, 86% of it through student scholarships. So most of the money, very similar to how IPT and Teach Nevada work, is intended to go to the students. This other piece around the programming, 9% of the funds, is meant to start loosening up some of the things that just haven't been a part of this. We know that giving student scholarship money has not changed the graduation rates or teacher retention. Despite its best efforts, Teach Nevada just hasn't been able to do that. And I think one of the key errors in this has been that two-year institutions weren't a part of it, and that we haven't forced ourselves to look more towards the community, as you're saying. So I don't know that I answered it, but at least I agree with you.
Can I add one more thing? Is
Go
that
ahead.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Chair Lang, Senator Neal, Kirsten Sear for the record. I just wanted to say, too, that we recognize that there is a diversity problem in our teaching corps right now, right? 78% of our CCSD students identify as diverse, and less than 70%, and less than 30% of our CCSD teachers identify as diverse. And just by looking at two pools of potential teachers that have been basically ignored in the past, and one is our students themselves, right? And two is our paraprofessionals who are working in our schools and are 65% diverse, we're already going to make huge strides in lifting people out of poverty and breaking generations, or breaking cycles of poverty. And so we are very committed to that. And I think throughout all of the data dashboard that we've been talking about, we would insist on setting up metrics to ensure that we're reaching all parts of our community. We would make that commitment to you.
Thank you for that. So I believe those were all of Senator Flores' questions. You would think they were mine, but they're not. They're so not. So I actually only had one question. I generally support the bill, and it was on page 5, and this is the wraparound services. You explained some of it around the subsidies for testing and the programs for different cohorts within that program to support each other. But I guess knowing that we're still missing teachers, who do we envision doing the professional mentoring, right? Because I know in the collab we have our different departments of ed, right? But then there's the academic, and then there is the theoretical. I'm in the classroom and I know how to do this to teach you how to do classroom management, how to manage an at-risk population, how to deal with all of the scaffolding and the different things that you need to engage in. So who is going to be doing that professional mentoring?
Kenny Varner for the record. Thank you, Senator Neal. So we've been doing that through the Paraprofessional Pathways Project. One of the things that this bill will help with the programming part of this is expanding the pool of PTIs that we can have teaching these courses. The bandwidth at the universities with full-time faculty who look less like the students that they're serving, by the way. We don't have the capacity to do this, and so part of this has been working deliberately with the districts and finding effective, strong teachers, mostly teachers of color, who want to be able to have the opportunity to work with the students in delivering classes, working in professional development. We also have a teacher leadership certificate that we've been able to use as an incentive for folks that want to mentor the undergraduate students. They then can get 4-course teacher leadership certificate, which is a gateway to a master's that we've been able to offset. And that's incentivized a lot of teachers, particularly teachers of color, who have not necessarily had access to teaching in the higher ed setting and working with the students in the higher ed setting. And we found that to be very effective, as well as working with some of the research grants that we've had around improving administrators of color and their ability to work in buildings. So we're working out in the buildings as well to make sure that we're delivering the professional development in a way that responds to those communities as well.
So just really quick, will there be an opportunity for retired teachers of color to come back in and participate in the professional mentorship? Because that is actually I don't think it's accessed enough in terms of program and being able to mentor and teach outside of, and it's not full time, so they might be interested in, giving some hours to a cohort.
Kenny Varner for the record. My doctoral advisor, my area of study is actually in multiculturalism and diversity, and a lot of the things that we talk about are fictive kinships, and I think having intergenerational mentoring is really important. So retired teachers are an underutilized asset, particularly for teachers of color, administrators of color, also non-educator members of the community. I think one of the things we have to be able to let go of too is that only educators can prepare educators. So part of the effort here is other sectors of the community that wrap around what a student needs. So some of the focus is on the classroom and what happens in a classroom, but why we're doing wraparounds is to look at the full constellation of things that impact kids. And there's other sectors and other employment sectors where people are longing for an opportunity to have more meaningful interaction around educative spaces. So retired teachers, sure, but I'm also looking and thinking about retired anyone who's doing really impactful work that can help mentor. We also have a really strong pipeline of doctoral students who were teachers who've left because they now want to get into higher ed, and they're doctoral students of color. They've been serving in the last 3 years with the funding with both NITEP and EPIC and some of these efforts as what we call senior fellows, and they serve as mentors as well. They're closer to practice. They have skill and experience, and it's sharpening their tool set while also being able to mentor students. I think it's really also important that when we work with a population in this state of significantly paraprofessionals, they don't come without experience. And why they're such a great resource is they too come with a wealth of experience and knowledge. They're not a traditional 18-year-old student pursuing teaching. They've been in classrooms for 5 or 10 years. They just don't have a license or a degree. And so what's really important about that is that there's intergenerational mentoring that goes the other way. The students aren't receiving this as a vessel that's empty. We rely on the students that are a part of this collaborative and receiving this support. Part of the give back for them is sharing their wealth and knowledge with other people. And that's another unique part of this. The current scholarship programs don't ask the students to do anything to give back. It's scholarship money. What we're doing is saying you have obligation for this money, and part of it is developing your skill set. Part of it is also sharing the wealth of experience that you have that's been underutilized in this state from what we can understand.
Can I add one quick thing too? Kirsten's here for the record. I mentioned that PEF has been mentoring paraprofessionals who want to enter the UNLV program. We believe strongly that we need to provide stipends to teachers who are mentoring future teachers. And so this coming year, we're going to be mentoring 120 mentees, paraprofessional mentees, and each mentor will get a $5,000 stipend to mentor 4 mentees. And we very much focus on recruiting diverse mentors. 34% of our mentors this year were diverse, and we are working to improve that number every year.
Thank you for that. Senator Lang has to go present a bill, so we will close the presentation and go and open up for support. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association. We've talked a great deal for the last year or two about the crisis of educator vacancies. Won't go into more detail about that, but just in terms of our response, while we tend to focus on educator retention, certainly, the pipeline and educator teacher recruitment is also critical. I would note that in SB 438, which we support, the language that creates the Teach Nevada Collaborative account authorizes the use of money in the account to recruit and prepare persons to become teachers and retain teachers who currently work in public schools. We're excited about the bill. Thank you.
You. Next.
Madam Chair, I guess, and members of the committee, Dr. Lindsay Diamond, Department Chair and Associate Professor of Educator Preparation in the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Nevada, Reno. On behalf of the University of Nevada, Reno and the College of Education and Human Development, we are in support of Senate Bill 438. We believe that this bill will provide the opportunity to engage with and partner with other institutions to ensure that we are implementing best practices in teacher preparation across the state. Additionally, this bill will provide equitable access for students to attend a teacher preparation of their choice at a 2- or 4-year institution. This also provides support to our students in Nevada high schools through dual and concurrent enrollment initiatives. Having a background as a teacher educator in Southern Nevada and as a director of assessment in my previous career at UNLV, and now as an educator and researcher at UNR, I understand the scope and needs of teacher preparation on a national level and how it impacts teacher preparation in our state. And I understand the steps that we need to take to create higher quality teacher preparation programs through this collaborative. Lost my spot. This will create higher quality experiences for our students who are interested, and we will support them beyond the typical college experience through the implementation of the wraparound services and mentoring support services. These will look unique, I believe, to every institution and how we choose to mentor the students who go through our programs. Ultimately, funding provided through this bill will allow us, as teacher preparation programs, the flexibility to meet the specific needs of our students and ultimately have an impact on the child and student outcomes across the state of Nevada. Thank you.
Thanks. Next.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I will say good afternoon to Senator Lang if I run into her in the hallway. My name is Trevor Parrish, and I'm the Manager of Government Affairs over at the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is in support of SB 438, as K-12 education and workforce development have been top priorities for us for many years at both the local and state levels of government. We believe that establishing the Teach Nevada Collaborative is an important step towards retaining and recruiting teachers to ensure quality education for our upcoming generations. This bill will provide the necessary infrastructure to strengthen our teacher pipeline in Nevada, which is important to ensure that we have enough teachers in the classroom. We urge your support of SB 438. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Nicole Rourke, representing the city of Henderson. First of all, we want to applaud this collaboration. I think this has been a long time coming, and to address the crisis that we have, we see so many vacancies in our schools, and we hear about it from our families and from teachers themselves. And so we see this as a giant innovative step forward in building the teacher pipeline and filling those vacancies in our schools. So we're grateful to the sponsor and to all the members of this collaborative for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Przinski, here representing Nevada Association of School Superintendents, and needless to say, we are supportive of anything that is going to help our teacher pipeline. This collaborative is a great idea, and I think it'll be productive. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Afternoon, Madam Co-Chair. AJ Delap, on behalf of Opportunity 180, I think the word of the afternoon is echo. We are echoing the support that's been expressed, and we urge the passage of the measure. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone else in Carson City in support? So knowing that we lost the feed in Las Vegas, we'll go to the phone lines for support for SB 438.
To testify in support of SB 438, press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. For the record, Rudy Zamora. Good afternoon. For the record, Rudy Zamora, Director of Public Affairs for Teach for America. Teach for America supports SB 438 and would like to thank Senator Lang for her leadership. As we all know, the quality of education depends heavily on the quality of teachers. Unfortunately, the shortage of qualified and competent teachers has become a significant issue in Nevada, as in many other states. SB 438 offers an innovative and comprehensive solution to address that critical problem. By bringing together all statewide efforts, Nevada can streamline and optimize the recruitment and preparation of individuals to become teachers. Ultimately, the teaching profession needs to be funded in a way that pays educators a true professionals. One thing that could help someone contemplate a future in teaching by lowering the debt burden. SB 438 is an essential part of the solution to getting more people in our educator pipeline. In addition, the collaborative would also work to retain current teachers by providing them with professional development opportunities, mentorship, and other resources. We urge you to support SB 438. We strongly support SB 438 and urge you to do the same. By working together, we can create a brighter future for our students in our state. Thank you.
Thank you. BPS, is there anyone else?
Yes, Chair, one moment. Caller, last 3 digits 822, press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Maria Romero, a first grade teacher at George E. Harris Elementary School, and I'm here in support of SB 438 because had it not been for the UNLV's Paraprofessional Pathway Program, I can honestly say that I would not be a licensed teacher today. I had obtained my associate's degree from CSN in the fall of 2020, but due to my work, home, and economic status, really didn't see myself becoming a teacher for another 4 to 5 years. I was fortunate that a friend of mine made me aware of the paraprofessional program the UNLV was starting, that if were to be accepted, would pay my full tuition to obtain my elementary education degree. All that was required for me was to demonstrate my absolute desire to become a teacher by devoting every spare minute of my life for a whole year to attend in-person and online classes. A great factor in the paraprofessional pathway program was the fact that they help you every step of the way, all the way through, from the application process, counseling for the classes to take, tutoring, mentoring, graduation, and beyond. They were always there for us and help us to become the teachers that we are now. In August of 2022, I proudly graduated from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas with my degree in elementary education. And I'm now teaching first grade, which I'm very proud to say that I am a proud product of the Paraprofessional Pathway Program. And I'm here on behalf of all teachers and paraprofessionals who want to be a teacher and who need the financial support and moral support and educational that I receive from this amazing program. Please help me to help them as well to become teachers and make the dreams come true. Thank you so much, and please support SB 438. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for your testimony. And I believe next caller.
Hello, my name is Giselle Lowe, and I've been working in the school district as an instructional assistant in primary resource, and I would like to speak in support of the SB 438. The Public Education Foundation Teacher Pathway Program has been hugely instrumental in helping me achieve my next goal on my roadmap to licensure, which is the placement in the UNLV Educator Preparation and Collaborative Program, and subsequently achieve a bachelor's degree in education. I feel that the PF Pathway is a unique program, and it specifically targets the homegrown talent of paraprofessionals within CCSD, many of whom, like myself, want to become licensed educators, but have been hindered by challenges, including economic factors and academic requirements. Really, without the financial assistance afforded by this program, I would have had enormous difficulty to really seriously consider pursuing a bachelor's based on the economic costs, and obviously that is a requirement in achieving my teacher's license. Through the PEF pathway, paraprofessional staff are able to seek licensure with the aid of the academic resources, the support of the mentor-mentee program, and the collaboration with the UNLV EPIC program. And that creates that crucial bridge that we need to overcome all these challenges. I myself have benefited from a really productive and informative relationship with an experienced and wonderfully approachable educator as a mentor. And my mentor's help and encouragement has been invaluable, particularly as, like many support personnel, I've come from an educational background which is quite different from the traditional US teacher pathway. I feel the wealth of professional experience, range of backgrounds, and a high proportion of diversity among our district support staff can only enhance the educational journey that's offered to our students. On a personal level, I think, like many of my students and my colleagues, I have felt that I didn't fit the mold of the college graduate, and I believe in the importance of demonstrating that an individual's educational roadmap is not set for life, and that there are opportunities available like the Clear Pathway program. Yes?
You've reached your 2 minutes, but before you hang up, can you say your first and last name again, please?
My name is Giselle Lowe.
Okay, thank you for that. And if you have any additional written comments, you can turn them into the committee so they can be a part of the record.
Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you. All right, so we have one more caller. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Am I unmuted?
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is LaShawn Threes. I'm a first-year special education teacher at Laura Deering Elementary School, which is a Title I school that also is identified as a Transformation Network school. I'm speaking in strong support of SB 438. My grandmother was a paraprofessional at Brindley Middle School in the 70s, and my mother worked at a preschool on the historic west side of Las Vegas for 28 years. I've worked since I was 15 years old because though the two women that raised me had stable employment, the income wasn't enough to make ends meet. For me, that was when earning a paycheck took priority over academics, forcing me to continue that cycle. I inherited their love of working with children, especially children with special needs on account of my brother and sister who were identified as special needs education students. Getting a job with CCSD was a dream come true for me. I've worked alongside education to help provide an impactful education experience for these students for almost 10 years. I began taking steps towards my dream of becoming a teacher 23 years ago when I started taking courses at the College of Southern Nevada. Like myself, many paraprofessionals understand that educators are lifelong learners and are taking courses over a number of years when we're able to afford them. It took me 21 years to get through CSN. I was able to complete my undergrad degree in special education because of UNLV's Paraprofessional to Professional Pathways project in just 1 year. The PPP project gave me the opportunity to take the legacy of 3 generations of minority women to a level that was almost unimaginable. I was able to recapture the high GPA that I had prior to joining the workforce and make the dean's list both semesters that I was in the program. The best part was I didn't have to sacrifice my income. I was able to complete my studies while doing a job that I love, and my success came from a high level of support that was offered from the program, and it went well beyond paying for courses. It was options for financial assistance to cover the cost of living so I could focus on my studies. I had multiple opportunities to attend amazing professional development workshops and opportunities for mentorship outside of my school. They even offer services to help with practice exams for teacher licensing. When programs like these are supported, the benefits are mutual for our state and the students as well. Our state is able to address the staff shortage from within, and our students get teachers that already have years of classroom experience and teachers that will stay employed within the school district, and especially these high-risk schools because we are already members with roots in our community. I'm in strong support of SB 438 because of its positive impact on our community and education system, especially learners of all ages and backgrounds. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so BPS, is there anyone else?
There are no more calls willing to provide support at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will go ahead and move to opposition for SB 438. Is there anyone in Carson City in opposition of SB 438? Seeing none, is there anyone on the phone BPS in opposition to SB 438?
Testify in opposition of SB 438. Press star 9 to take your place in the queue now. Chair, there are no callers willing to testify in opposition at this time.
Okay, so we will move to neutral for SB 438. Is there anyone in neutral in Carson City for SB 438? Seeing none, is there anyone on the phone in neutral for SB 438?
Chair, there are no callers willing to provide neutral comment at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. Call the presenters back up to the table. Senator Buck has a question.
Thank you so much. Sorry, as I was reviewing this, something came to mind. I was wondering if Superintendent Ebert was on the phone because I was wondering about how she was going to market that, if there's possibilities to do that to the schools, school staff, because it sounds like there's support staff that are involved with that. Also, in one of the last bills, the first bill that we heard today, it looks like there's excess funds because of shortage of staffing. So I'm wondering if somehow some of that, if especially in the schools with 30% a vacancy rate, you would think that that money sitting there that should be used for staff and just leveraging some of the resources. Not that you definitely need the 50 million, but as far as that money sitting there, maybe this could be another answer for that. And what else? Are there any cohorts that you have? I saw the dots in the different schools, but as far as building cohorts, especially in the ones with 30 and 20% vacancy. Sorry, there's a lot of questions there.
Kenny Varner for the record. Thank you, Senator Buck. We work actively with all the districts that we can. So we do have students outside of Clark County, and I think that that's really important to know. We work with Washoe County. We'll work with anyone, and we make this available to them asynchronously and through web means. We'll do anything that we need to get folks. We've also reached out through charter organizations, and I think that was a question as well because they're also in the public sector. So we've tried to do grassroots reach out ourselves. And interestingly enough, it's the students themselves from our very first cohort that are super tied to the communities that they work and live in, and they've been the word of mouth. So we went from 35 to 68 to 80, and this next year between our graduate and undergraduate version, we have over 300 applicants. And so we know that there's this space to grow, and through the networks of those schools, that's where it's happened.
Okay, thank you for that.
Kirsten Sear for the record. I just wanted to say also that like I said, we've identified more than 2,000 paraprofessionals who are interested in becoming teachers. As we have combed through applicants for our kind of pre-mentorship program, we have given priority to applicants who are from the teachers or schools with the most teacher openings. And we have found that they tend to return to those schools. With our limited data so far, we found that they tend to return to those schools. Their principals won't let them go.
Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and if you guys, I don't know, a single closing statement, we have to get to Senate Finance.
One sentence. Thank you so much for your patience. I really don't know how you do it on a daily basis. We appreciate you, and we have to catch our flight by.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will go ahead and close Senate Bill 438 and open up for public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? Okay. Seeing no one here for public comment, we will go ahead and adjourn Senate Committee on Education. VPS, is there anyone on the line for public comment?
If you would like to provide public comment, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers willing to provide public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. So we will go ahead and adjourn Senate Committee on Education. And we're rolling work session.